Hey guys, tonight, we'll quietly slip past misted sliding doors and step into the world behind the silk curtains of feudal Japan. Here, you are not a warrior, not a noble, and not a servant either. You are a concubine, lacking the title to be truly recognized, yet never forgotten completely. Your existence is folded into heavy layers of kimono, wound into the hair you pin up each morning, and carried in each step that must be graceful enough to be remembered, but never so striking as to provoke envy. So, if you're ready to listen to what history books chose not to record, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, only if this journey truly speaks to you. And if you'd like, leave a comment to let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I'm always curious about the kindred spirits out there, listening in the dark. Now then, dim the lights. Turn on a small fan if you enjoy a soft background hum. Sit still. Breathe in, slowly. And together, we'll drift into tonight's journey. Where every beauty is paid for in silence, outside your room, the sky remains a deep, undisturbed black. It is still night in name, but your eyes are open. You're already awake, though no one called for you. A single, narrow blade of light slides through the wooden slats of the shutter, slicing a line across the floor as quiet as breath. The air carries the chill of a place that has not yet warmed with the day. Your futon feels rigid beneath you. Its cotton cover stretched over straw matting that presses its rough texture into your back no matter how carefully you lie. The matting seems to remember everyone who has ever slept on it. You rise slowly, with practiced stillness, making not a single sound. Here, in this household, everyone moves like mist. Soft, elusive, unnoticed. But make no mistake. This stillness is not peace. It is weaponized silence, designed to restrain and remind. Chances are, you won't survive this life. At least, not as the person you were before. One wrong glance, a smile that lingers too long, a hairpin placed on the wrong side, or a word that dances too close to honesty, and you become nothing more than yesterday's silk. Folded away. Forgotten. Replaced without ceremony, the paper screen beside your futon slides open with a whisper that barely stirs the air. A maid, no older than you were when you arrived here, perhaps younger by a few springtimes, kneels and bows low enough that her forehead grazes the floor. She doesn't raise her eyes. She doesn't speak. None of them do unless required to. Her movements are precise and practiced, already pulling out the silk robes that will cover you today. Each layer has been chosen for a reason. The inner one for purity. The middle for harmony with the season. The outer robe, its colors and patterns dictated by your standing in the household and by the mood or preferences of the Lord whose name you do not speak, yet who owns everything in this house. That includes, in some form or another, you follow her without question to the small bathing chamber tucked within the stone foundation of the house. The walls here are cool to the touch, rough with time. A brazier, squat and blackened, radiates the dim glow of freshly stirred coals, but the air is still laced with winter's edge. You remove your robe and stand quietly. Steam coils from the surface of the wooden tub, rising like incense. The water has been warmed to the proper temperature, not for your ease or comfort, but because cold skin on a concubine is said to bring misfortune. You are expected to be flawless. Even your body temperature has expectations. You lower yourself in with care. The heat bites at first, not enough to soothe but enough to remind you that you are still alive. Goosebumps chase up your arms. You remain still. You count your breaths slowly, letting them guide you through the ritual. You're already rehearsing the faces you must wear today. Gratitude that does not border on desperation. Awareness that never feels threatening. Serenity that never slips into dullness. Being a concubine requires more than beauty. It is performance woven with silence. It is exile that comes with silk instead of chains. You are paid in garments, not in liberty. Even from within the bath, you can hear the estate begin to stir. The scuff of woven sandals on stone. Low voices that hover near the kitchen. A distant rooster lets out a short crow, subdued, barely audible. Nothing in this household is permitted to be louder than the man who rules it. When you are dried and dressed again, it is by hands that avoid your gaze. One maid lifts and folds while the other adjusts and secures. The first robe they wrap around you is plain, unadorned, a soft white that lies close to your skin. The second layer is a pale green, chosen for the time of year. The outer robe is the most intricate, dyed in the colors of muted clouds and stitched with flying cranes. You study the cranes in silence. They are meant to symbolize longevity. Perhaps also grace. Perhaps also the quiet desperation of things that look free from far away. Then comes the ritual of your hair, a ceremony all its own. You are led to a small stool, low to the floor and worn smooth. A servant kneels beside you, her hands already moving with experience. She warms a small block of camellia oil, then begins to comb it into your scalp, section by section. The scent is heavy and floral, sweet enough to overpower the lingering dampness of the house. Slowly, with quiet precision, she draws your hair into a series of elegant loops, securing each one with thin lacquered pins. They are slender and lovely, but sharp enough to draw blood if turned the wrong way. You've heard rumors about concubines in other households who reshaped their hairpins into weapons. Not for beauty. For defense. For revenge. There are still debates among scholars over whether a concubine was allowed personal ornaments. Some argue that even the pins in your hair belong to the Lord. One way or another, you know the truth. They are not yours. Nothing here is. Not the silk against your skin. Not the hours of your day. Not even your reflection in the polished mirror. When your appearance is complete, you are brought back to your room. Breakfast has already been laid out on a lacquered tray, black with gold edges. There is a small bowl of rice, a pickled plum placed neatly to one side, and miso soup with its steam curling toward the ceiling. A cup of roasted barley tea waits beside them, its warmth already beginning to fade in the cold morning air. You eat with care, legs tucked beneath you on the cushion, eyes lowered. You face the painted screen instead of the hallway. It is not permitted for you to look toward the corridor. Someone of higher status might pass. You remember the cautionary tale of Lady Fuji, the concubine who dared to eat her morning meal facing the courtyard. Within a week, she was removed from the house and sent to a distant temple under the name of spiritual retreat. No one ever saw her again. That was 10 years ago. Outside, snow begins to fall. The flakes drift slowly, landing on the stone steps in delicate patterns. They cling for a moment, then melt into silver droplets. You stare at them as they vanish. Secretly hoping that if someone must stumble today, it will not be you. There is something deeply meditative about these mornings. Everything proceeds like clockwork, without the need for voices or reminders. It is the rhythm of the house. Every movement has been rehearsed 100 times. You are one small part of a vast machine built on quiet and control. You are polished. You are replaceable. No one wrote this into the poetry you once read, but now you understand. When your tray is cleared and the final sip of tea has passed your lips, a soft gong chimes from within the estate. Its tone is low and even. The Lord is awake, the day begins in earnest. You kneel in the hallway near his receiving chamber. Around you are other women with hair as dark and glossy as yours, with skin as smooth, with robes as fine. You all bow together, foreheads to the polished floor. He may pass by. He may not. The bow remains the same. The ability to be overlooked with grace is not something anyone teaches you. It is something you learn through repetition and consequence. Here is a small piece of history for you. During the Edo period, the inner quarters of a daimyo's mansion were not simply luxurious. They were structured with strict precision. Concubines might number in the dozens. Each movement, each spoken word, was monitored by senior attendants. You were ranked and recorded. You were arranged with as much care as a flower display. The system was flawless on the surface. But underneath it, in the seams and shadows, there was room. A sliver of space for secrets. There was the concubine who left notes, hidden deep in the folds of her obi, for a guard she was never meant to speak to. She vanished from the record soon after. Some say she ran. Some say she was caught. Some say her name was erased and written again elsewhere, as someone new, back in your corridor, a voice speaks your name in a whisper. You rise without hesitation, smoothing your sleeves. You move forward, deeper into the house, toward your first lesson of the day, but remember, all of this is only the beginning, you have not even spoken a full sentence yet. You enter the lesson chamber with quiet steps, your tabi-clad feet barely making a sound against the polished wood. The room smells faintly of ink, incense, and something harder to place, an old scent, like pressed paper and dried lotus root. A folding screen divides the room in two. On the far side, a silk-clad figure murmurs low greetings to the others. Today's lesson will be calligraphy first, then waka poetry. You take your place at the low writing desk, careful to kneel precisely, robes folded neatly at your sides, hands in your lap until instructed. The brushes are already arranged on the table, goat hair bristles, a stone inkwell, and the day's paper, smooth, thick, unforgiving. One slip and your character warps into embarrassment. You've heard of women dismissed from favor for their ugly brushwork. Some were said to be too crude to cradle refined thoughts. As if a single crooked kanji could reveal the contents of your soul, your tutor, a lean woman with sharp eyes and an unreadable smile, gestures for you to begin. She doesn't speak much, she doesn't have to. She's the sort of person who can humiliate you with a slight twitch of her sleeve. You dip your brush into the ink and begin to write the assigned characters, kokoro, heart, yum, dream, nagareru, to flow. A fitting one, you think. Everything about your life here is meant to flow. Gracefully. Silently. Away, you glance sideways. Lady Red Sleeves is writing next to you, her sleeve embroidered with phoenixes that sparkle in the lamplight. She doesn't notice your look, or pretends not to. She's very good at pretending. In this world, rivalries are quiet and slow-burning. A wrong word won't spark a fight, it'll spark a rumor. That rumor might become a suggestion. That suggestion becomes your transfer to the servant's wing. That's how power works here. Not in blows, but in paper cuts. Historians still argue whether concubines had the power to wield influence through such lessons, or whether their education was just another form of decoration, like painting cherry blossoms on a folding fan. But you know. You've seen how a perfectly composed poem, murmured at the right gathering, can shift a lord's mood. And moods, in this house, are political earthquakes. After calligraphy comes waka poetry. Today's theme is fleeting beauty. Of course it is. They never assign lasting justice or personal autonomy. Just 5 lines, 31 syllables, all arranged in that fragile 5-7-5-7-7 pattern. You pause, brush hovering midair, and then begin, snow on the roof tile. A bird lands, then takes flight. Nothing lingers long, even warmth from yesterday, slips beneath the sliding door. Your tutor reads it, then nods once. That's the highest praise you'll get. Somewhere outside, a wind chime tinkles. It's hard to tell if the sound is pleasant or lonely. Maybe both. After the lesson, you retreat to a small side room where mirrors are laid out in front of cushions. A young attendant enters with a wooden box of accessories, combs, face powder, tiny pots of rouge, and an item that's both tool and weapon, the kanzashi hairpin. Long, carved, often lacquered in colors to match the season. Yours today is mother of pearl and shaped like a camellia. There's an old story you overheard once, whispered during a particularly slow tea ceremony. a concubine, denied audience for months, carved a haiku onto her kanzashi and stabbed it into a tree outside the lord's window. He read it. She was summoned. A week later, she vanished. No one agrees whether that was a triumph or a warning. You powder your face lightly, just enough to mute the natural glow, which is considered vulgar in some circles. Then a dab of color on your lips, not enough to suggest seduction, just enough to suggest you're not entirely dead inside. Once you're properly arranged, you make your way to the East Garden for the mid-morning walk. It's not for relaxation, nothing here is. It's a performance, an unspoken stage where women parade for passing eyes, often unseen, but always observed. The garden path is raked in meticulous swirls. Every pebble placed deliberately. The cherry trees haven't bloomed yet, but the plum blossoms are thick and fragrant, their scent almost too sweet. You inhale deeply and almost gag, but manage to turn it into a graceful sigh. 2 other concubines join the walk. One is Lady Crane Voice, known for speaking so softly that servants sometimes bend sideways just to catch her words. The other is Lady Clammy Hands. A nickname earned not for any public error, but because you once shook her hand during summer and it was like grasping a raw mushroom. They exchange pleasantries, delicate observations about the weather, a new robe design, the scent of a recent incense batch. You nod in agreement, adding a comment about the unusual color of the plum blossoms. It's a test, of course. Lady Crane Voice narrows her eyes slightly, as if weighing your tone for signs of arrogance. You smile softly. Let them guess, a quirky detail for you. Some records suggest that in certain courts, the planting of trees in the concubine's garden was not just symbolic, it was strategic. One concubine was said to have coaxed her lord into planting a plum tree near her window, just so he'd think of her whenever it bloomed. She later became one of his chief favorites. Blossoms as power brokers, who knew? You circle the garden twice more, then return inside. A maid offers you a bowl of warm sake, not enough to intoxicate, just enough to warm the chest. You accept with a bow. Your hands remain tucked inside your sleeves, as per etiquette. Time is slippery here. Not like outside. You begin to forget what season it is. What day. Whether the sun rose yesterday or if you imagined it. Everything melts into ceremony and repetition, like ripples in a koi pond. But unlike the koi, you're not allowed to surface for air. You return to your room for a brief moment of rest. It's the only time of day you're technically unoccupied. You use it to reread an old poem inked onto the inner sleeve of a robe, one of your own. You wrote it months ago during another morning lesson, and the words still ache. Silk clings to my skin, yet I feel less adorned now than when I wore rags. The poem was never read aloud. That would be unwise. It remains your little rebellion, stitched into cloth. You recline slightly, careful not to wrinkle your robes. A bird calls from somewhere beyond the walls. You wonder if it knows how far the sky stretches, and then, almost like clockwork, comes the hush that falls across the house. He might come. Or he might not, but either way, the waiting has begun again. You sit in Seiza beside the paper-screened door, legs folded perfectly beneath you, hands resting lightly in your lap. There is nothing else to do. No task, no lesson, no idle chatter allowed now. Just the stillness, and the wondering, will he visit? The thought alone pulls 1,000 little ripples through your mind. If he does, you must rise exactly 3 seconds after the door slides open, bow just low enough to show grace but not desperation, smile in that exact, measured way that says, I'm honored, but not obsessed. If he doesn't come, you must still rise eventually, still smile, still pretend the moment was never meant to happen at all. In feudal Japan, concubines weren't just lovers. They were symbols. Political tools. Gifts. Bargaining chips. Occasionally, they were even born into the role, daughters of lesser samurai or merchant families offered to lords in hopes of better status. Once accepted, you belonged to the inner chambers. And whether the Lord visited once or 100 times, your duty was the same, to be ready. Outside, the wind moves faintly through the bamboo. You can hear it tapping lightly against the eaves like a hesitant knock. Behind you, the maid who accompanied you here kneels with her head bowed. She won't speak unless spoken to, and her job is not to comfort you. The floor beneath your knees grows colder as the hour stretches on. You count heartbeats. You study the wood grain in the doorframe. You imagine what the other women are doing. Some will be pacing, some meditating. Some might be braiding their sleeves in nervous habit, though they'll undo it before anyone sees. A few might be crying, but always quietly. You don't cry. Historians still argue whether the system of concubinage was more prison or privilege. Some women rose to incredible influence, becoming mothers of heirs, advisors behind the screen, even cultural icons in their own right. Others vanished entirely. Their names were recorded once in a registry, then never again. The paper door rustles faintly. You freeze. Is that, no? Just wind. Still, your heart does that familiar stutter, the same kind you feel before slipping on wet stone. A soft panic. A sudden awareness that you have no control at all. You breathe out slowly and keep your posture. It's not about getting used to the uncertainty, it's about performing composure so well that you forget what certainty ever felt like. You remember a story told in hushed tones, a concubine who accidentally let her shoulders sag while waiting. The Lord's mother saw her and whispered a single sentence to her son. The girl was gone by the end of the week. Maybe to a temple. Maybe to the kitchen staff. Maybe just gone. The screen door stays shut. Eventually, a servant passes down the hall and gives a tiny shake of her head, just enough to signal today's verdict. No visit. You nod as if you expected it. As if you didn't feel the whole morning coiling tighter and tighter inside your ribs like a waiting snake. You rise, bow, and leave the room as gracefully as you entered, each step deliberate, each movement a veil. Back in your quarters, you remove the decorative sash around your waist, the one you wore in case he arrived, and fold it carefully. Even rejection has its rituals. You're offered a small bowl of tea, this one sweetened with plum syrup. It's supposed to soothe the nerves, although all it really does is remind you how tightly those nerves are strung. You sip slowly. Somewhere down the hall, a shamisen begins to play. The music drifts through the wood panels like mist, and then, like breath held too long, released too fast, you laugh. Just a little. A soft puff of amusement, barely audible. Not because anything's funny, but because this life is so exquisitely absurd sometimes. You live in a palace. You wear silk. You study poetry. And you're treated like fine porcelain, beautiful, decorative, and never quite trusted. A quirky historical tidbit. In some courts, concubines weren't just judged by beauty or skill. There are records of lords rejecting a woman simply because her voice reminded him of his cousin. Another was dismissed because she blinked too often. You start to wonder how often you blink, then shake the thought away before it spirals. You pull out a small pouch from beneath your bedding. Inside are 3 folded notes, not written by you, not to you, but hidden here all the same. Messages between younger concubines and the outside world, ones they begged you to hide. You've never read them. That would be unkind. But you do know one is addressed to a mother, one to a younger brother, and one to a child left behind. You're not a rebel, but you're not heartless either. Historians often debate whether concubines maintained outside ties. Officially, once admitted to the household, a concubine's former life ended. But the truth was always murkier. Some lords allowed letters. Some punished them. Some simply ignored the practice altogether, trusting in fear to keep their concubines compliant. You tuck the pouch away again, careful to smooth the bedding, and knock. This time, the sound is clear, deliberate. You stiffen, but it's not him. It's the lady-in-waiting assigned to check the women's quarters. She informs you, in a tone of absolute neutrality, that the afternoon schedule has changed. There will be a visit to the incense room for scent blending, mandatory. You bow, as one does. And exhale. The incense room is a strangely intimate space. Cushions arranged in a circle. Small charcoal braziers warming ceramic dishes. Powdered woods, oils, and resins stored in delicate boxes, agarwood, sandalwood, clove, cinnamon, and the faintly bitter smoke of burnt orange peel. You sit in silence with the others as an older woman, too old to still be a concubine, likely kept as a companion in residence, begins to pass around scent samples. You inhale each slowly, naming the feelings they invoke: warmth, longing, childhood, loss. This exercise is less about answers and more about presence. Your lord appreciates women who think deeply about even invisible things. Lady Redsleeves names a blend the scent of a lover's sleeve in spring. Someone else calls one the breath of yesterday. You offer, the wind, after laughter. It earns a rare glance of approval. You wonder if any of these women are truly relaxed. If anyone here has ever relaxed. You doubt it. Even laughter here is practiced. You once saw a woman giggle too loudly at a banquet and get relocated to the servants' quarters by morning. Still, there's something oddly soothing about the incense. The way it curls and shifts, just like your own thoughts, ephemeral and layered. You think again of that phrase, the breath of yesterday. It lingers. As the session ends, the old companion places a hand briefly on your shoulder. Just a moment's pressure. Perhaps a thank you. Perhaps a warning. In this world, touch is rare enough to mean everything. Back in your quarters, evening begins its slow descent. The wind outside has picked up, and you catch sight of a maid closing the outer screens with practiced grace. You realize you've spent nearly the entire day waiting. For what, you're still not sure, but you're learning to be very, very good at it. The sun has almost vanished behind the elegant curve of the tiled rooftops, dipping slowly into the folds of the horizon like a brush pulled gently across silk. The slanting light drapes the papered halls in soft gold and lengthening shadow, transforming familiar corners into fleeting silhouettes. This is the hour when the air feels suspended, hushed in a strange in-between. It is too late for structured lessons, too early for sleep. Time settles unevenly here, like dust that never fully drifts down. You return to your quarters in silence. No footsteps echo behind you, no chatter spills from open doors. Every woman has retreated to her own room, her own rituals. You slide the door open and step inside. Greeted by the muted scent of camellia oil and incense that still clings to the air. You reach for your evening robe, the fabric already laid out by unseen hands. Its colors are deeper now, layers of indigo over rust red, folds of weight and quiet elegance. This change of attire is not merely a matter of comfort. It is communication, part of the unspoken vocabulary of this place. Your garments say exactly what they need to say, not restful, not alluring, but dignified. Respectful. Prepared, you untie your earlier sash and fold it with care, placing it beside the robe you remove. A quiet rustle of silk follows your every movement. As you change, your gestures are practiced, almost ceremonial. You know that each layer must fall correctly, each fold must align. These transitions, from one kimono to another, speak in subtleties. They tell stories, declare moods, suggest intentions without ever saying a word. A woman in this house can speak volumes by the color of her collar. Your hair is adjusted with a comb of lacquered wood, its spine cool to the touch. You smooth a few strands into place. A little rice powder is dusted along the curve of your jaw and across your brow, only enough to diffuse the skin's natural sheen. The powder gives you a porcelain stillness, not lifeless but contained. Beauty here is not meant to dazzle. It is meant to reassure. The face you present must reflect control, not hunger. Tonight is not for flirtation or indulgence. Tonight is for refinement. As twilight deepens, your next assignment awaits. There are no bells to summon you, no scrolls pinned with schedules, yet you know. The evening hour belongs to practice. To polishing the invisible arts. Tonight, the lesson is refinement training, and as always, it turns toward that ancient path with many names. Tonight, it is Onna no Michi. The woman's way. You walk to the chamber quietly, your socks muffling each step. The hall smells faintly of cedar and cooling tea. In the softly lit room, others are already seated, arranged in a gentle arc like flower petals placed by hand. No one speaks above a hush. Each robe is a different hue, but all conform to the same language of subdued elegance. You settle into your cushion, back straight, knees just touching the edge of your sleeve. Every detail matters. Especially here, at the front of the room sits Madame Fushide, the appointed teacher of this nightly dance. She is not young, nor is she frail. Her bearing is precise, every vertebra perfectly stacked, as if she has never once allowed her body the luxury of collapse. Her obi is tied so tightly and perfectly that you wonder if she breathes at all. Her face is calm, unlined by anything so untidy as doubt. When she speaks, her voice cuts like the click of a fan unfolding. Tonight, she says, and her tone holds the weight of instruction carved into stone, we practice listening. You feel the irony before the sentence ends. Listening. As if you are not already surrounded by it. As if your every moment is not spent tuning yourself to whispers, half-sentences, subtle cues. Listening is not new. It is the skill upon which your survival has always depended. Still, you nod. Pairs are formed. You are placed beside Lady Crane Voice, who speaks so softly that her words seem to arrive in ripples. She murmurs about the changing season, about the way leaves yellow at the edges first, like aging parchment. Her phrases are carefully shaped, her metaphors brittle and beautiful, fragile as glass teacups. You incline your head at the right moments, not too soon, not too slow. You keep your eyes lowered just enough to show thoughtfulness without withdrawal. Then it is your turn, you say, in a voice laced with warmth but not boldness, that the sound of falling persimmons reminds you of bells ringing in a forgotten temple. You let the image hang between you like a scent. Present but ephemeral, Madame Fushide gives the smallest of nods. Not a sign of praise, exactly. Just confirmation that you did not misstep. Good listening, she says, a curious footnote. In some courts, silence was considered a higher art than speech. Not the silence of vacancy, but the active, attentive pause. A woman could rise in status by knowing exactly how long to wait before answering, how to nod without haste or hesitation. A breath taken too soon could read as arrogance. A pause held too long might signal coldness. Mastery lay in the margins, so you learn to shape your silences. To time them with precision. Your stillness is deliberate, sculpted. You are both present and reserved. The way a calligraphy brush hovers before touching the page, next come the role-plays. A series of mock dialogues, each one a careful rehearsal of impossible balance. Tonight's scenario, the Lord is troubled by a poor harvest. He is not angry, but disappointed. You must comfort him without offering solutions. Express hope without daring to imply correction. You must be the soft wind that soothes, never the storm that rearranges. When your turn comes, you bow your head slightly, allow a trace of sympathy to cross your eyes, and say, perhaps the plum trees will gift sweetness early next spring. The earth sometimes delays its kindness. Your tone is soft but sure. The words are light, but weighted just enough to linger. Madame Fushide allows herself a small smile. That is a rare currency here. You have passed. Outside this room, historians will one day wonder aloud whether such training was an act of empowerment or a tool of repression. They will write papers and offer lectures. But inside these walls, such questions dissolve. Here, power is delicate. It wears a velvet sheath. If you can make a man feel whole again without letting him know he ever felt broken, you have already succeeded. The session ends without fanfare. You rise with the others, bow to Madame Fushide, and file out beneath the pale flicker of lanterns. The hallways are darker now. The lamps glow like half-moons, casting light onto stone pathways that remember every footfall. The air has cooled, and with each breath, you feel the edge of the season changing. Somewhere, faint and distant, someone is playing a koto. The sound echoes like something remembered rather than heard. You pause, letting the notes settle into your bones. As you begin walking again, a younger concubine approaches. Her steps are cautious, her head bowed low. She reaches your side, glances at you, then quickly looks away. Did you truly write that poem about the persimmons? She whispers. Her voice is thin, uncertain. You nod. She smiles. It is small, and it does not last long, but it is genuine. Not the practiced upturn of lips taught by Madame Fushide, but something unguarded. I liked it, she says. Then, with a shy bow, she turns and disappears into the shadowed hallway, her figure folding into darkness like a petal swept by wind. When you return to your room, a tray has been set upon the low table. It waits in silence, modest and perfect. Your evening meal. A lacquered bowl of miso soup, its steam fragrant with seaweed and dashi. A sliver of grilled fish, skin crisped just slightly. A small mound of white rice. And something rare, a single mochi, soft and round, dusted in kinako powder. The sweetness feels almost illicit. You sit and eat slowly, each bite a ritual. Eating too quickly is frowned upon. It implies need. Need implies scarcity. And scarcity is something you must never suggest, even in hunger. In this world, refinement demands restraint. You chew slowly, feeling the texture of each mouthful. An odd fact comes to mind. In certain courts, concubines were forbidden from eating garlic or green onion entirely. The fear was that the scent might linger and offend the lord. Others were banned from certain fish depending on the moon phase. One record you once read claimed that mackerel made the heart heavy. You never particularly liked mackerel, but now you miss it. Memory does that. You drink your tea. It is light, green, slightly bitter. The candle beside you flickers, casting gentle movement across the paper wall. You notice the shadow of your own figure stretched long and thin. One silhouette looks bold. Another looks weary. Another might have belonged to a version of you who lived in the mountains and never once powdered her face. Then, footsteps, not hurried. Not careful. Just, hesitant. A quiet shuffle of someone unsure. A young maid appears in your doorway and bows low, her arms straight by her sides. Lady Kazu, she says with formality. You are summoned to serve tea to the Lady Mother. You nod, your stomach turning faintly. Not from fear. Not quite. But from knowing. This is never just tea. The Lady Mother resides in the oldest part of the household. Her wing smells of aged sandalwood and something fainter, like dried camphor. The furniture there predates most people who enter. Her presence is heavy. Her silence is not passive. It waits like a net. You carry the tray yourself. This is called an honor, though both you and she know better. The performance begins before you even knock. You enter, kneel, bow, and place the tray precisely before her. The ceramic cups are lined to the grain of the mat. Your hands move like water, her eyes narrow. Your sleeves are too long. You lower your head. I will adjust them, my lady. She sips, then sets the cup down so gently it barely makes a sound. You look thinner, she says. Are you ill, or simply vain? You smile with calm grace. The season changes, and my appetite wavers like the wind. There is a pause. Then, a small nod, she talks. You listen. Her stories meander. She speaks of her youth, of other women, of the dangers of beauty and the fickleness of favor. She speaks as someone who has seen stars fall and rise again, who knows that petals rot before they dry. You nod when expected. Offer nothing more, eventually, she waves you away. You bow, leave, and let your breath return only when the door is fully closed behind you. Night has arrived in full. The moon glows through the paper windows, a pale arc of light tracing across the scroll painting on your wall. Cranes in flight. Wings stretched in a pose that no bird could hold, yet somehow always beautiful. You remove your robe, fold it precisely, and lower yourself onto the futon. Your body aches in ways you cannot name. Muscles held too long. A spine too still. A throat too quiet. Tomorrow, you will do it all again, but for now, you lie in stillness. Not comfort. Not peace, just stillness. And you let it hold you. Morning returns without fanfare, slipping back into the world without so much as a sigh. No golden light spills in grandly through your screens. No birds sing your name. Instead, the dawn presses softly against the paper windows, diffused and pale, like breath behind thin silk. You open your eyes to the familiar dimness of your chamber. The ceiling beams are where they always are. The walls hold their silence with precision. They do not creak. The air remains still, respectfully quiet, as though it, too, is waiting for your first movement. This room was designed not just for beauty but for control. Nothing startles. Nothing surprises. The world here does not stir until you do. You listen first. That habit is second nature now. It has kept you safe. Always begin with the ears. No voices beyond your door. No hurried footsteps against the wooden hull. No rustle of silks moving with intent. Silence, unbroken and symmetrical. That is good. Urgency, here, is rarely good. Urgency often means someone has been chosen. Sometimes for favor. More often for reprimand. Today, it seems, that someone is not you. A knock, your maid enters as softly as mist. She bows, speaks no word, and begins the morning ritual. A basin of water is brought in. The rim has frosted again, and small crystals edge the porcelain like a crown of thorns. Your breath clouds the air as you kneel before it. The cold bites into your fingers, making your knuckles stiff, your wrists ache. You cleanse your hands with practiced elegance. No flinching. No hesitation. Even discomfort must look composed. She lays out your robes. Today, another layer of plum. The outer garment is rich and muted, the inner lining soft, nearly lavender. The choice is no coincidence. It suits early spring. It also calls back to your perfume, which holds the faint memory of plum blossoms steeped in rain. Yesterday, Lady Redsleeves wore the same scent. Today's choice is not passive. It is a response. You wore it first. This robe says so, quietly. Like the footnote of a poem meant only for those who know how to read between lines. Here, every fold of fabric is a phrase. Every color, a whisper of intention. This kind of strategy is not written in any scroll. It is not taught aloud. It lives in glances, in silences, in the creases of sleeves and the softness of footsteps. It is absorbed slowly, over years. Like incense through the skin, your breakfast is brought in. You eat alone, as always, at the small table near the window. A panel has been left slightly ajar, either by accident or quiet mercy. Through the narrow slit, you see two gardeners at work in the outer courtyard. They move with reverence. trimming the bonsai with tiny shears no larger than a child's scissors. Their attention is unwavering. Each curve of branch is studied, adjusted, reconsidered. The cuts are gentle, almost apologetic. The sound of snipping drifts in, steady and meditative. You find it soothing. You wonder, not for the first time, if anyone has ever examined you with such care. Not admiration. Not desire. Not expectation. But care. Attention for your shape, your growth, your hidden symmetry. Or is your beauty simply assumed? Routine. A given fact. A backdrop. There is a rumor today. As always, it arrives in fragments. Whispers woven into duty. First, your maid says nothing, but her silence lingers oddly after she brushes lint from your sleeve. Then, a seamstress appears to deliver new obi sashes. She does not speak directly, but as she unfolds the fabric, she says with a gentle smile, "Lady Rin will need additional hair ornaments soon." That is all. And that is enough. You offer the most neutral expression you possess. A smile so faint it could be mistaken for politeness. It says nothing. It suggests nothing. Any warmer, and it might signal jealousy. Any cooler, and it might hint at disdain. Both are dangerous. Both will travel, repeated in new voices by evening. There's a reason your face is still as water these days. Still water does not invite ripples. Your morning lessons are cancelled. No explanation. But you understand. Lady Rin's apparent assent will require adjustments. Attention must be reallocated. The household is a fragile web. When one strand trembles, the rest must flex. Instead, you are told to attend a leisure walk through the inner courtyard. The phrase is coded. No one expects relaxation. This is a time to be seen, to observe, to gather impressions without ever appearing to. You are to be watchful, graceful, and forgettable all at once, so you walk. The eaves above drip meltwater, beads falling rhythmically onto the stone path below. You step carefully across the worn stones, smoothed by centuries of cautious feet. The garden is beginning to stir. Buds push from the plum branches like soft knuckles. Pale moss crawls forward over the rocks, green and velvet. A koi flicks its tail in the pond, not with joy, but with the lazy motion of something half remembering itself. You walk beside Lady Crane Voice. Her presence is like a lullaby. She does not speak much, but she hums softly. A melody you almost recognize. A festival tune, perhaps. Something from a year before, or a lifetime. She catches your glance. Smiles. Just a little. And keeps walking. Her hands remain folded within her sleeves. Always composed, behind you. The newer concubines walk together. Their excitement has not yet been tempered into caution. They whisper too loudly. You wince internally. One of them says something about Lady Rin. A single word rises like a sharp reed above the rest. Ambitious. Your stomach tightens. That was unwise. In the Edo period, concubines were placed in strict hierarchies. Official rankings determined where you lived, what you wore, who you spoke to, how long you bowed. The favorites had privileges. Larger quarters. Better fabrics. Access to the Lord's ear. Sometimes even influence over decisions. But with every step upward came a narrowing ledge. The higher the pedestal, the lonelier the fall. You've seen wings clipped mid-flight. Lady Rin may be rising now, but gravity is always patient. Shortly after, you are summoned to a scroll viewing. Not because your opinion on art matters, but because presence is part of the ritual. The Lord has received new calligraphy, likely from visiting nobles. Someone must admire them meaningfully. That someone is you. You kneel on the tatami, hands resting with perfect symmetry. The servant unrolls the first scroll. It is bold. The ink curves in wide arcs, a poem about spring rain penned by a monk whose name you remember from a temple near Kyoto. The brushwork speaks of age and confidence. It weeps in quiet rhythm, others murmur approval, soft and melodic. When it is your turn, you tilt your head slightly and offer, the final brushstroke feels like the air parting after a prayer. It is poetic. Safe. Just obscure enough to suggest thoughtfulness, not arrogance, the senior steward gives a slow nod. That is your reward, for a breathless moment, you feel seen. Not admired. Not ranked. Simply seen, it vanishes before you can hold it, in the afternoon, you change again. New robes. A different palette. Red layered over gold, with muted green at the collar. Your obi is tied slightly higher, the knot shaped with intention. There will be a performance. A no troupe has been brought to entertain the household. Rare. Formal. The mood hums beneath the surface like a distant drum, you take your place in the outer hall. Cushions are arranged in rows. Each woman sits by rank. A tiny lacquered table rests beside you, holding sweets you will not eat and tea that will go cold. This is not relaxation. It is calibration. You are here to react correctly. The actors enter. Their movements are slow and deliberate, as though they glide across air, not floor. Their masks are blank, and yet they pulse with meaning. One mask in particular is bone white. Its eyes are black lacquered slits. Its lips barely shaped. But it stares with such still sorrow that your chest tightens, you know the story. Everyone does, a woman waits for her beloved to return from war. He never comes. She loses her mind. She wanders the hills. She becomes a ghost, you keep your expression placid. But inside, something shifts. Not a shattering. Just a quiet click, like a lock sliding into place. You once heard a phrase, whispered by an older companion who has since disappeared. A concubine's fate lies between her beauty and her boredom. Today, you wonder if madness grows in that thin space. The one between what you must be and what you cannot want, a hidden detail. In some courts, concubines were playwrights. They composed secret dramas for the lord's amusement. Subtle tales, full of double meanings. One such play, once performed in private, told of a silkworm who refused to spin unless freed. The woman who wrote it was gone within a month. Her name erased. You are not that bold, not yet. After the show, you are escorted back. The corridors feel quieter. The women more subdued. No one speaks of Lady Rin. Not aloud. And that is how you know the rumor is real. Silence is always the final confirmation. When you return to your chamber, a note has been left on your tray. It is unsigned. But the handwriting is familiar. Slanted. Neat. Careful. It reads, "Are you awake in your dreams, or only asleep in someone else's?" You do not reply. You do not hide it. You burn it. The evening closes in like silk drawn tight. You sit before your low mirror and begin to brush your hair. The comb snags. Once. Twice. Too much camellia oil, perhaps. Or tension. You hum softly, half-consciously. A few bars from Lady Cranevoice's tune. Your voice startles you, you cannot remember the last time you heard yourself sing. You blow out the candle, the dark folds in around you, velvet and dense. It silences all but your thoughts. You lie down, gather the blanket, and shut your eyes. Tomorrow has already begun to take shape behind your lids, and you, again, will mold yourself to match it. The dawn arrives in the usual way, not with trumpets or golden declarations, but softly. Quiet and silver, it seeps through the paper shutters like breath through a woven fan. The light is faint, cool, undemanding. It slides across the floor without disturbing a single speck of dust. You wake without being summoned. No voice, no footstep. Your body stirs because it is time, because routine has carved grooves into your bones so deep they speak louder than any bell. It is not urgency that draws you up from sleep. It is discipline. It is protocol, learned and repeated until it has replaced instinct. Outside, the frost still clings to the edges of the walkway stones. Pale ice laces their corners with delicate fingers. You glimpse it briefly through a crack in the outer screen as your maid lifts it open just enough to let in the morning air. It bites, clean and cold. Somewhere beyond the courtyard, a single bird chirps once, then falls silent again. The stillness is nearly absolute. The plum blossoms have bloomed in the night. Their soft pink petals gather in clusters, blushing against the gray courtyard stones. You smell them faintly through the walls, a perfume the wind carries without permission. The scent is subtle, a whisper rather than a call, but it settles something in your chest. There is comfort in that rhythm, in the way the trees bloom whether you are noticed or not. Whether someone has risen or fallen. Loved or forgotten. Nature remembers what people discard. Your morning begins, as it always does, with ritual. Water is warmed in the same ceramic bowl. Steam coils into the air, vanishing before it rises too far. You cleanse your hands with practiced care, fingers steady even as the warmth bites at your chilled skin. A tray is brought in with your first meal. Plain rice, pickled root, and a bowl of miso the color of worn lacquer. No conversation. No noise. The maid who serves you bows low and does not meet your eyes. She lays out your robes, smoothing the fabric carefully. Today's choice is a layered set in plum and ash, a combination soft enough to suggest modesty but not dull enough to suggest neglect. As she ties your obi, you notice her fingers falter. A tremble, almost imperceptible. Her eyes flick toward the door. Once. Then again. You don't speak. You do not ask. There is no need to know what she has heard. Not yet. At breakfast, you are joined by Lady Crane Voice. She kneels across from you on the tatami mat, robes tucked neatly, hands folded in her lap. Her face is paler than usual, and her lips are drawn just a touch tighter. She leans forward slightly, as if to offer a polite greeting. But stops short. Her voice lowers, barely above a breath. There's been a letter. From Kyoto. The words are simple. But they land with weight, you feel it immediately. Not fear exactly. But something cold, slow, and creeping. Like water seeping through straw sandals, unnoticed until it's soaked into the soles. From Kyoto means the capital. From Kyoto means high-ranking names written in black ink and sealed with crimson wax. From Kyoto means something has shifted. And when power moves in Kyoto, the ripples reach even the quietest corners of distant estates. Lady Crane Voice says no more. She doesn't need to. In a place like this, brevity often speaks louder than explanation. When letters arrive from the seat of power, it is rarely good news for women tucked away behind silken screens. Historians debate whether women like you were regularly reshuffled, or whether the threat of displacement was simply another leash. But you've lived here long enough to know what a sealed letter really means. It is the sound of the earth shifting, even if no one else hears it yet. The walls do not creak. But you can feel them tilt. You push the rice aside, appetite dissolved. By mid-morning, the air in the women's quarters has grown strange. Not tense exactly. Just quieter. Conversations begin but trail off. Sleeves are folded with greater precision. Eyes are downcast more often. You can feel the hush gathering like dust in the corners of the room. You are sent to the library wing. Normally, this would please you. The quiet of old paper. The gentle scratch of brush on scroll. The smell of cedarwood ink. A rare hour where your mind can soften slightly, spread out like sunlight on a floor. But today, your stomach tightens as you approach the room. You half expect someone to be waiting inside. To speak your name. To announce a change. Instead, Lady Red Sleeves is already there. She is seated neatly at the low writing table, sleeves folded back with graceful exactness. Her brush moves with such careful control that it feels like a weapon disguised as elegance. You nod in greeting, selecting a familiar scroll from the shelf nearby, The Tales of Ise. You've read it many times. Today, the verses land differently. If I had known how brief this world would be, I would have lived louder. The words catch in your throat. You glance at Lady Red Sleeves. She has stopped writing. Her eyes are on you, one brow lifted slightly. You like that one, she says, not asking. You nod once. She lifts her brush again, dipping it slowly into the ink. Then, as if speaking to no one in particular, she says, they say the Lord may be called to Kyoto soon. Some women will be sent with him. There it is. You keep your face still. But inside, everything lurches. Being chosen to accompany him could mean visibility, advancement, proximity to influence. Or it could mean being forgotten in a place where no one knows your name. Kyoto is no promise. It is a coin toss wrapped in silk. You ask lightly, you think they'll take Lady Rin? Of course, she replies. She's the flavor of the season. There's no malice in her voice. Only resignation. The taste of something you've swallowed too many times to be bitter anymore. The room returns to silence. The sound of your brush on parchment is like rainfall on dry leaves. A curious fact comes to mind. In some periods, women sent to Kyoto were required to register with the local bakufu authorities. Their names were listed, their ages noted, their decorative function recorded in neat rows. A phrase that haunts you still. Decorative. Function. Two words that sit side by side, and yet strip you of anything whole. In the afternoon, etiquette practice brings new instruction. You are taught a revised walking posture, arms drawn closer. Chin dipped by precisely 3 degrees. The instructor calls it Kyoto style. The words are neutral. The implications are not, just in case, she says, just in case. Your limbs respond, but they feel distant, borrowed. As if they no longer belong to you. Or perhaps they never did. You sense it everywhere now. In the way the other women move. How they preen just slightly more. Hair smoothed more carefully. Sleeves adjusted more often. Bows held longer. Smiles that hover too precisely at the corner of the mouth. Even Lady Clammy Hands, who once fidgeted through every tea ceremony, now sit still as a painted screen. No one names it. But everyone feels it. The silent audition has begun. Lunch passes in near-complete silence. The faintest clink of porcelain against wood feels thunderous. You slip away for a moment, seeking solitude in the back garden. The snow has begun to retreat, revealing slick stones beneath. You sit beside the koi pond. The water is still, save for the occasional flick of a tail. A bamboo fountain knocks gently against a stone, keeping time. Talk. Talk. The rhythm is ancient and unbothered. You lean closer, voice barely audible. Take me with you. The koi blinks slowly. Their silence says nothing. Or perhaps everything. That night, during calligraphy practice, your tutor presents a new phrase. A single step changes the entire path. The irony stings. You almost laugh, but you don't. Instead, you lower your head and write it again and again. Each stroke bleeds slightly into the parchment, like secrets too soft to speak aloud. You wonder if the ink understands more than anyone else in the room. Later, you hear that the Lord's mother will begin rearranging seats in the West Chamber. For travel purposes, they say. Your name has not been called. Not yet. But omission offers no comfort. Historians love to ask whether women like you ever found peace. They cite scroll paintings of serene faces, robes flowing like water, eyes downcast in perfect harmony. But those were images designed for display, for illusion. You've seen what exists between the folds of even the most graceful kimono. You know how silence can slice deeper than any blade. Before bed, you kneel before the incense burner. You light a stick of pine and sandalwood. Watch the smoke rise in slow spirals. Let it curl around your fingers like ghost threads. It is your own quiet offering. A ritual no one assigned you, but one you need. You whisper into the dark, if the plum must fall, let the branch remember it, softly, without blame. You lie down. You pull the quilt up to your shoulders, tucking it in tight. Not for warmth. For protection. For steadiness. You stare at the ceiling, letting your eyes blur against the beams. You imagine Kyoto. The garden paths. The lanterns. The sound of someone saying your name as if it means something, and if that world never comes, then you will write, then you will remember, then you will survive anyway. The next morning starts not with the rustle of silk, not with the soothing whisper of fabric pulled across the floor, but with something sharper. The shuffle of power. It has a sound of its own, subtle and deliberate, like footsteps in a shrine. You are barely awake when the summons arrives. Not from your maid. Not through the usual chain of quiet messengers and protocol. This time, it is the Lady Mother's own steward who appears, his silhouette framed in your doorway like a painted figure from a parable. He is a thin man, with angular features and robes so stiffly pressed they hardly seem to move when he bows. Her ladyship requests your presence, he says, his voice is carved smooth, like lacquer polished with ash and care. There is courtesy in his tone. But it is not a request, and both of you know it. He keeps his head lowered, but his eyes never drift. The weight of his gaze settles on your collarbones like frost. Within moments, you rise. You are dressed quickly, but not hastily, in robes of pine green and saffron. The choice is calculated. These are colors that signal balance, moderation. They say nothing bold, make no claims of ambition. They whisper neutrality. A careful blend of harmony and distance. You pin your hair, then pin it again. Your fingers catch in a knot, so you start over. You untangle the tassels on your sash 3 times before stepping into the corridor. Every detail must speak without drawing attention. That is the trick. The walk to the Lady Mother's chamber feels longer than you remember. The halls stretch on like questions with no answers. Each of your footsteps lands like a thought too loud. The floorboards do not creak, but the silence hums. You hear nothing except your own breath, measured and shallow. When you finally kneel before her, the Lady Mother does not speak right away. She sits motionless, framed beneath a hanging scroll. The image above her shows cranes in flight, wings outstretched, heading into the distance toward a darkening sun. It is a deliberate choice. Everything she does is deliberate. You've kept your head down, she says at last. Her voice is dry, but not brittle. A commendable quality. You bow. Deeply. Slowly, she lifts a teapot and pours her own tea. That, too, is new. A gesture that carries its own meaning. You do not reach for your cup. You keep your hands still. We are selecting 3 women to accompany the Lord to Kyoto, she continues, placing the lid gently back on the pot. One must be pleasing to the eye. One must be steady in the storm. And one must be invisible until needed. You remain still. You wait. She turns her eyes toward you, gaze sharp enough to carve. You are the 3rd. And so, just like that, your name is written into the next chapter. Not for your elegance. Not for your poetry. Not for your conversation. Not for any dream you ever dared to harbor, you are chosen for your absence, you bow again. You say the proper words, the ones that were drilled into your mouth long ago, but your chest is no longer steady. Inside your ribs, something tightens and swells. Not quite grief. Not quite fear. Something like pain, but quieter. Historians will later debate what women like you understood about these selections. Whether they recognized the forks in their path. Whether they knew, even then, the shape their fate would take. Some say women were chosen as tokens. Others say they were taken to amuse, or to distract. Some were sent simply because their absence would solve a quiet problem in the household. A rearranging of the inner board, you are dismissed with a single flick of her fingers. When you return to your quarters, your maid is already there, folding garments with precise corners and wide, stiff sleeves. A lacquered case rests open on your tatami mat, its compartments lined with silk. Your combs are wrapped. Your brush is sorted. Silks in soft, unassuming tones are stacked like pressed flowers, blank scrolls. A comb. A pouch of face powder. A writing kit. Everything smells faintly of pine and smoke and departure. Before the noon bell, Lady Redsleeves appears at your door. She does not step inside. She remains in the doorway, framed like a cutout, arms folded tightly into her sleeves. So, she says. You'll go after all. You nod. The words stick to your throat like plum paste. Good, she says. Her voice is flat. Then she pauses, just long enough for the silence to gather between you. Remember. They'll forget your name the moment your carriage turns. You do not ask who she means. You know. Everyone knows. Instead, you lift your chin slightly and say, then I'll remember it louder. She gives the smallest smile, a flicker, more shadow than shape. Then she vanishes. Your farewell meal is quiet. A bowl of barley porridge. Pickled greens. A single cured egg yolk resting in soy. It is not a celebration. No feast. No parting banquet with wine and poems and lanterns. You are not a bride. You are not even a gift. You are an item packed with care. You are being sent. Not escorted. As the sun lowers and throws amber light across the rooftops, the compound begins to stir. A procession is prepared, discreet but formal. You change again, into travel robes the color of russet bark and old ivory. Your feet are wrapped in soft boots lined with felt, and a cloak is laid over your shoulders. It smells of cedar and the dry hush of a storage chest unopened for months. A lacquered comb is slid into your hair with the care one gives to a keepsake. Before you leave, a pouch of protective charms is pressed discreetly into your sleeve. The stitches are delicate. You do not know who left it. One charm is embroidered with the word kokoro, heart. You try not to read into it. But the thread lingers in your thoughts. Outside, the carriages wait. Wood-bound. Covered in cloth. They are silent, steady, unadorned. No crests. No symbols. Lady Rin ascends into the first carriage. Two young maids flutter around her, adjusting her robes, smoothing her hair, whispering nonsense. Her garments shimmer in the low light, catching every flicker of dusk like a fish darting just beneath the surface. You are led to the second carriage. The interior is lined with a single cushion and a folded blanket. A box of tea sweets rests on the side. You will not eat them. The scent of camellia oil and cedar drifts in from the walls, the door is pulled closed, and just like that, the household vanishes behind you. Not loudly. Not suddenly. It simply ceases to exist in your field of vision. What remains is the road. The wheels creak once, then begin to roll. The earth shifts. The silence folds itself around your shoulders. During travel, concubines are expected to remain silent. Hours pass without a word. To speak without prompting is seen as a sign of weakness, of nervousness, of inappropriateness. So you sit in silence. The sound of the wheels becomes a rhythm, almost a lullaby. But the road's jolts keep you just awake enough to remember where you are. The moon rises into view. Pale and distant, its light spreads across the fields like cold milk. Through the paper screen, you watch the countryside slip past, rice paddies half flooded, small shrines with flickering lanterns, the occasional figure bent over a field. The caravan halts at one point to water the oxen. You step out and stretch. Your knees ache from kneeling. The air is sharp with the scent of wet grass and distant wood smoke. Somewhere nearby, a village cooks its dinner. Fires crackle. Something sizzles. You close your eyes and imagine sitting there, warm and unnoticed, but that is not your life. It never was. By nightfall, you reach the border outpost. The compound here is square and bare, nothing like the estate you have left. Guards shift positions with bored precision. You and the other women are separated and led to small sleeping chambers. Not rooms. Not quarters. Just space, no cushions. No scrolls. No decorations. Just pale walls and stillness. Lady Rin complains about the cold. One of her maids fans her gently, though the air is freezing. No one stops her. You do not speak. Dinner is a bowl of rice and miso, served on a wooden tray. You eat slowly, mechanically. You do not taste it. Sleep comes, but it carries no dreams. The next morning, the official retinue joins you. Men with polished crests. A monk in travel robes. A scribe with ink-stained sleeves. One older woman arrives, face lined, hands calloused, voice low and clipped. She glances at you only once. You'll keep your voice low and your eyes lower. You bow. As always, by mid-morning, you are back in the carriage. The road worsens. It is narrow, slick with mud. Trees press in close. Crows cackle from the branches as though mocking your presence. Near dusk, one of the carriage wheels cracks. You are forced to wait by the roadside while it is repaired. You step down and sit on a stone, not speaking. You find a charcoal stub in the pocket of your sleeve and trace a poem across the linen. The road grows crooked, I walk it anyway. Soft, footsteps leave deep marks. You will stitch it later, when no one is watching. By the third day, everything begins to blur. The rhythm of motion dulls your thoughts. You hum songs from your childhood under your breath. You recite old poems backward. You give names to clouds. You give names to pains. You wonder how many days it takes to vanish from memory. Some old documents from the Edo period listed traveling women only by their robe colors. No names. No faces. Just the green one. The lavender one. You wonder what they would call you now. On the fourth night, the lights of Kyoto appear at last. Not as fire or brilliance, but as a low, glowing haze. Lanterns in the mist. The smell of chestnuts and pine. The distant sound of music rising over tiled rooftops. Your carriage slows. You pass through the gates of the Lord's guest estate. It is smaller than home, but laced with the same kind of quiet power. You step down. The guards bow. The doors open. You do not know what waits beyond them, but you walk forward, because that is what you do. You are a concubine. You travel like a secret. You arrive like a question. The Kyoto estate breathes with a different kind of silence. It is not the calm, curated hush of the countryside residence you came from, where every whisper felt rehearsed and every footfall was placed with the careful grace of a dancer. That was a silence born of distance, a stillness cultivated through generations of habit and layered ritual. This silence is denser. It has weight. It listens. Here, the walls are thinner. Voices carry. Eyes linger longer. Every corner seems to observe. You feel it before you cross the threshold, even as the carriage door opens and your foot touches lacquered wood. This place does not belong to you. And it does not pretend otherwise. Your quarters are smaller, more efficient. They are still beautiful. Nothing here is without taste, but the beauty is compressed. The tatami smells sharper. The cushions are firmer, holding less memory. The incense burns with a darker note, more resin than floral, almost bitter. There are fewer screens, fewer textures. The walls are clean, almost too clean, and carry none of the soft layers of grace that once enveloped you. There is a window, narrow and stubborn. It opens only a fraction. But through that sliver, you see rooftops pressing close together like folding fans laid edge to edge. You see canal bridges hung with pale lanterns. You see smoke curling upward in ribbons from tea shops at the edge of the market district. Sounds of the outer city drift in faintly, the wooden clack of geta on stone, laughter rising then vanishing, the call of a vendor haggling over persimmons. You will not walk among them. You are not allowed that kind of closeness. But it steadies you to know they exist. You unpack without words. Your maid moves like a shadow across the room, laying your belongings in their designated places with the smooth, silent urgency of someone well-trained in transition. You slide your favorite brush into a small drawer by the mirror. You tuck your travel pouch beneath your futon. You smooth the wrinkles from your robe and lower yourself into sitting position, always the sitting. By nightfall, a summons arrives, not to meet the Lord. That would be far too forward. The chain of precedence here is long and steep, and your name does not sit high on it. No, you are summoned instead to a quiet reception. Not a formal affair, but something more curated. A gathering, 5 women are present. 2 arrived with you from the countryside retinue. 2 are clearly already stationed here, their manner precise, their posture honed. The last is a figure from the capital itself. You know it at once. Her robes shimmer not from newness, but from the kind of old wealth that hums rather than sings. Her eyes are hollow, not from age, but from exhaustion. She looks like someone who has played every game and grown tired of the pieces. Lady Rin is radiant. She has arranged herself like a painting meant to dazzle. Her smile beams a half-degree too brightly. Her laugh lands just slightly higher than necessary. Her gestures linger a moment too long. She is trying. She has not yet realized that Kyoto has no love for effort. Here, elegance whispers. Here, power hides in stillness. This city favors silence honed to a blade. Conversation circles around the upcoming banquet. An official from the shogun's court is expected. The lord must be seen as a man of discernment, surrounded by cultivated and gracious companions. You are told to prepare verses. You are told to choose a robe in a subdued tone. You are told to smile, but not like a girl in a market. You do not ask what that means. You understand enough. Historians still debate whether Kyoto's banquets served real social function or whether they existed simply as stages. Most now agree they were theaters of implication. A sip of sake timed too slowly could be an insult. A fan placed too close to the dais could imply arrogance. Where you sat mattered. What you wore mattered. What fish you were served could lift you or bury you. The entire evening was a board game where the rules were never spoken aloud. You were not a guest. You were a piece. A pawn draped in silk. That night, you returned to your quarters with a thin rectangle of rice paper in your hand and a blank poem still forming in your mind. You sit before your writing board and compose slowly, carefully. You do not reach for moonlight or cherry blossoms. You do not dress your words in yearning. You write with restraint. You write what you feel. You write, the hawk watches, from a cedar branch. It does not sing. You leave it unsigned. You understand that the silence is signature enough. In the morning, rehearsals begin. Yes, rehearsals, For dinner, you and the other women walk the length of the reception hall in the order assigned by the steward, one by one, stepping precisely, pausing deliberately. You are shown where to kneel, how to fold your hands, when to tilt your chin, and at what angle your gaze should fall when someone of greater rank begins to speak. A court lady observes you closely, and when your posture sags by the smallest margin, she snaps her fan shut beside your shoulder. You lean like a willow, she says. Be the stone. You nod and try again. Later, you are given a tray and a teapot. You practice the pour. The sound of tea must not be too loud. The angle of your wrist must remain fluid but controlled. Your sleeve must drape in a way that suggests grace, not carelessness. The cup must be set down exactly 3 finger widths from the edge of the tray. You repeat this motion dozens of times. Your hand begins to tremble. You do not stop. A curious detail is whispered between the maids. In Kyoto, it was once fashionable to judge a woman's refinement not by her words, but by how she adjusted her collar when bowing. If done too swiftly, it signaled a provincial background. Too slowly, and it suggested vanity. The ideal movement was given a name, cloud chasing. You try it once in your mirror, just to see. You look like someone swatting away a fly. You try again. That afternoon, you are permitted a walk through the inner garden. It is not wide. It does not sprawl. Everything is vertical here, stone paths pressed between narrow walls, water basins tucked beneath leaning pines. Lanterns nestle in corners, their sides traced with moss. As though time has been allowed to rest here. You walk with deliberate calm, pausing now and then to let your eyes adjust to the detail. In a quiet corner, you notice a tree. A persimmon. Its branches bow slightly, low to the ground. You stop. You remember the poem you once wrote. The one about falling fruit and memory. For a moment, it feels as though some small part of yourself has arrived ahead of you, rooting itself here before your footsteps ever crossed this soil. You do not know if that is comforting or cruel. That evening, there is no summons. Lady Rin is called instead. She moves past your door with smooth grace, flanked by her 2 maids who move in perfect unison. Her scent follows her. Sweet and crisp, ginger blossom, sharp enough to command attention. It lingers after she is gone, like a performance waiting for applause. You sit alone. You fold your arms over your knees. You listen to the faint notes of a bamboo flute drifting from the lower garden. One of the musicians is rehearsing. Without thinking, you hum a countermelody under your breath. Outside, the wind stirs. The paper in the window rattles softly. You think it may rain before morning. You light a candle. You fold a new poem into the pleats of a fan. You rehearse your smile in silence. Another day passes. Then another. Still, you are not summoned, but you are not forgotten either. You are not dismissed. You are not scorned. You are something else entirely. You are maintained. You are sustained. Like a vase set carefully on a shelf, present but untouched. Like a scroll that no one reads, but no one dares remove. Scholars still argue whether women in your position wielded subtle power or simply lingered in decorative purgatory. Some say that even the overlooked ones shaped the current of the court. Others believe they dissolved, quiet as tea steam. You believe both things can be true at once. Eventually, a maid enters with news. Your seating will be changed for the banquet. You will be moved closer to the musicians. Not entirely removed. Not hidden. Just shifted. Lady Rin, you are told, will sit beside the Lord's Chamberlain. You bow. You thank her. You say nothing more. Later, alone in your quarters, you let your breath rise and fall as you press one palm flat against your chest. There is a tightness there. Not pain exactly. Not grief. Just something caught. Something unspoken. That night, when you return from the bath, you find a folded piece of paper resting on your pillow. There is no name. No signature. Only a drawing, a hawk. Perched on a bare branch. Its wings are closed. Its eyes are open, no poem. No words. Only that, you press the paper beneath your hand as you lie down. And you dream not of waiting, you dream of silence that watches. The banquet day arrives cloaked in humidity. Even before the first brush of light touches the tiled roofs, the air presses in from all sides, heavy and swollen with summer's arrival. The sky itself seems weighted, a soft leaden color that hangs low above the estate. Inside, the walls sweat with stillness. It is the kind of morning that makes every movement feel exaggerated, every breath just slightly too loud. You rise early, long before the maid arrives. In truth, you never fully slept. The night passed in a blur of half-dreams and shallow breaths. You woke often, unsure if the soft creak outside your door was a servant or your own heartbeat. When the first gray light seeps through the paper window, you are already upright in your futon, hands resting in your lap, spine straight as if sleep had been a luxury too indulgent to allow. The knock comes at last, soft and deliberate. The maid enters with the first of the garments. Your formal robes are presented with care. 6 layers in total, no, not the full 12-layer junihaido of imperial court rank, but enough to weigh your limbs and anchor your breath. The underrobe is white linen, fresh and crisp. The layers above are plum silk, embroidered with lines of gold thread that shimmer only when the light catches them just so. A tasteful palette. Quietly elegant. It has been chosen with precision. This is the attire of someone meant to be present. But not central. Someone meant to notice, not dazzle. The dressing takes time. Each robe must be arranged with symmetry. Every fold smoothed. Every layer aligned so it peeks out just enough to suggest refinement without ostentation. The weight of the ensemble settles into your shoulders, your hips, your calves. You feel yourself sink into the robes, not just physically, but mentally, as though slipping into a role prepared for you long before you were born. Your hair is the next ordeal. You sit for nearly an hour while it is oiled, twisted, pinned, and lacquered into place. Camellia oil slicks the strands, and lacquer sets them. A fan-shaped ornament is positioned just above your right ear. Not too large. Not too ornate. A modest nod to seasonal grace. A symbol that whispers, rather than declares. Nothing about you must suggest ambition. You study your reflection in the polished mirror. The face that looks back is both familiar and foreign. The features are your own, but they wear a mask of composure that you do not fully recognize. You look like someone who has not paced the floor in silence all night. Like someone who does not feel her ribs close in each time a door slides open. The estate is alive. Servants dart across courtyards like ink strokes on rice paper, carrying trays, towels, and cloths with frantic focus. Kitchen boys rush past with baskets of chopped ginger and steamed rice. The air is thick with the scent of vinegar, soy, and incense. Someone is polishing every tile in the main corridor. A gardener kneels by the path, plucking bruised petals from the gravel as if a single wilted blossom could cast disgrace on the household. Even the koi pond has been skimmed clean, its surface glassy, the fish beneath moving like secrets just beneath discovery. You are not exempt. You are not above this choreography. You are a piece within it. A scholarly aside, Kyoto banquets were often rehearsed twice. Once as a full simulation, with stand-ins for honored guests. Once again in whispers and sketches among the household staff. By the time the event arrived, spontaneity was reduced to an illusion, every movement orchestrated, every gesture calculated. It was not unlike theater. Perhaps it was theater. And you are one of its players. You are ushered into the reception hall before most of the guests have arrived. Already, the trays are being laid out with seasonal confections, each more delicate than the last. There are bean paste sweets pressed into the shape of maple leaves, glistening with a hint of sugar. There are rice cakes glazed with edible gold, so thin they quiver when touched. Citrus peel curls into spirals on porcelain dishes. You will not taste any of them, your seat has changed. It is no longer near the center, nor entirely removed. You are placed at the far left of the room, close to the reed screen behind which the musicians wait. It is not exile. But neither is it prominence. It is a placement of quiet utility. You are a presence meant to blend. A decoration with ears, the guests begin to arrive. You bow with practiced grace, hands folded, gaze lowered to the correct angle. The names come in hushed tones. Men from the shogunate's lower echelons. Not the core of power, but its outer rings. Enough influence to matter. Enough proximity to burn if one strayed too close. Then, the Lord enters, his movements are slow, but purposeful. Indigo silk wraps his frame, embroidered with a single crane across his shoulder in silver thread. His face betrays nothing. His gaze is cool, skimming the room as if ticking off boxes on a list. When it meets yours, it lingers for less than a full breath before moving on. He does not summon you. Lady Rin, as expected, is seated close to him. 2 cushions away. Her kimono is crimson. Bold. Daring. It carries a dragonfly motif, symbol of resilience, of swiftness. But also a risk. Her rank does not justify such vibrance. You wonder who advised her. Or if she ignored the advice, she lifts her sake cup with the elegance of someone who has practiced long and hard. She tilts her head when spoken to. She laughs once, high and clear. It is not unpleasant. He listens. Once, the musicians begin. You sit so near that you can see the tremble of a koto string, the pulse of a flutist's throat as he exhales. The melodies are familiar, songs about the turning of the seasons, the ache of longing, the sorrow of snow melting too soon. Court songs that wrap themselves around memory. Your face remains still, no one looks directly at you, but you know they see you. A lesser-known tradition. Some concubines were trained to hum in perfect harmony with court music without drawing attention to themselves. It was a test of sensitivity. If the Lord noticed and was pleased, the hummer might be invited to compose lyrics for the next gathering. You breathe in time with the melody. You let the hum rise. Low, almost imperceptible, a court lady to your right stiffens. You stop, the meal begins, you eat with care. Not out of modesty, but necessity. Your throat is too dry for anything more than sips. Pickled daikon. A sliver of grilled trout. A curl of seaweed. Your sleeves remain carefully arranged, your posture firm but yielding. You do not reach. You do not glance upward. Then, from across the room, the Lord speaks. He requests a poem. A minor courtier rises, reciting a verse from the Koken Wakashu. His voice is adequate. His choice safe. When he finishes, there is a scattering of polite nods, a whisper of applause. The Lord turns to Lady Rin, and you? Have you composed anything of your own? She pauses. Just slightly too long. A breath caught between calculation and hesitation, then she smiles, only one. But I fear it is too simple. He lifts his hand, she recites. A soft piece. Gentle imagery. Early summer wind. The stillness of waiting. It is pretty. Inoffensive. And entirely forgettable. You see it in his eyes. He nods. He moves on, and then he turns to you, and you. The room contracts, you feel the collective gaze of every woman pierce your skin. You feel the potential danger of this moment, the peril of saying too much, of not saying enough. You bow. Your voice is steady, a short verse, my lord. He waits, you recite, the hawk watches, from a cedar branch, it does not sing, a beat of stillness, then he smiles. Just slightly, observant, he says. Sharp. He turns away, the moment lasts no more than 10 heartbeats. But the impact spreads like ink in water. Lady Rin does not shift. But her hand tightens around her cup, 3 cushions away. Lady Redsleeves lowers her eyes. Perhaps in deference. Perhaps in acknowledgement, you return to your silence. The banquet unfolds around you. Dancers sweep across the floor. The music continues. The guests grow louder, flushed with sake and self-importance. A tray falls. A laugh echoes. Somewhere, a man begins to snore softly behind his fan, but you sit perfectly still, your body vibrating with the echo of those 2 words, observant. Sharp. There are historians who argue endlessly over whether poetry held true power in court life or whether it was simply one more form of masquerade. But you know what you felt in that moment. The shift. The recognition. Not the favor of a lord. Not the envy of a rival. Something smaller. Something stranger. You were seen. Not as decoration, as witness. Later that night, back in your chamber, your maid undresses you with quiet efficiency. She says nothing about the banquet. She does not need to. Her hands are gentle. She sets a fresh pot of tea beside your mat before retreating. You sit by the window, the cup warm between your palms. Outside, the sounds of the estate continue. The distant echo of laughter. The metallic clink of dishes being gathered. A musician plucking a final note in solitude. You lift the folded paper from your drawer. The hawk is still there. It does not sing, but it sees, and so do you. You do not expect anything to change after the banquet. You tell yourself as much. You whisper it in your mind like a spell against disappointment. And for the most part, it holds true. The mornings are the same. You still wake before sunrise, startled not by sound, but by the familiar rustle of distant robes and the soft, deliberate rhythm of footsteps in the corridor. You still sit quietly on your mat, waiting for the knock that always comes, always timed, always gentle. Your morning tea arrives as usual, served in a porcelain cup too delicate to hold anything as unimpressive as lukewarm water, and yet, lukewarm it always is. You still copy scrolls as part of your morning ritual. The same verses. The same brush. The same ink. Lines upon lines drawn from the writings of a long-dead monk whose name you know by heart, though you suspect he would not recognize your world if he saw it. The brush strokes calm your nerves, most days. Other days, they feel like a cage built out of reverence. You keep your hand steady. You still wait for summons that never come, but something is different now. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It arrives like fog, creeping at the edges of habit. A shift in air pressure. A difference in weight. People pause before they speak to you. They still speak, yes, but there is a heartbeat of hesitation beforehand. You notice it in the smallest things. The way a maid lingers just a second longer at your door before knocking. The way she adjusts the fold of your collar twice instead of once. The way the steward's voice, always formal and cool, now softens by an imperceptible degree when handing you your daily assignments. The way Lady Redsleeves does not sweep past you in the corridor as she once did, but instead slows her pace, allowing your steps to match. You have shifted, not forward. Not upward, but into visibility. Into definition. Into focus. It is not a promotion. It is not elevation. But it is a kind of weight, a kind of presence. And in a place like this, where power moves in glances and lives in the folds of silence, being noticed is both an invitation and a risk. The poem, The Hawk, was the turning point. It hovered over the evening like a quiet signature. The words were simple, the delivery calm. But in courtly life, simplicity can carry sharpness. Restraint can be louder than song, a widely accepted historical fact. Japanese poetry was rarely just art. It was a form of dialogue. It could be compliment, critique, confession, or challenge. Poets in silk whispered truths more cutting than steel. A well-placed verse could elevate a woman to the attention of the court. Just as a misstep in metaphor could destroy her standing. One famed example during the Heian period involved a woman whose poem condemned the hypocrisy of nobles. Her punishment was swift. Her inkstone broken in a ritual of rejection. Her name removed from household records. She ceased to exist in all but memory. You remember that story well, so now, you still write, but more carefully. More privately. Your verses are shorter. Tighter. Measured. You inscribe them not on scrolls, but on paper scraps, on the backs of fans, on pieces of silk tucked into inner sleeves. You hide them like prayers. You no longer read your poetry aloud, and yet, your reputation shifts. Not for beauty. Not for charm, for quiet cleverness, it is safer, within days, your daily duties change. The alteration is modest, but deliberate. You are no longer assigned to embroidery review or music rehearsals. Instead, you are asked to assist with correspondence. Stacks of letters, scrolls of inventory, folded records of offerings exchanged between the estate and nearby noble families. You are handed lists. Names. Dates. Amounts. Returns, it is work most women avoid. Tedious. Demanding. Dry. But you find something in it. Something hidden beneath the ink and formality. Patterns. Understatements. Glimpses of the true machinery behind the elegance. You begin to see the currents under the surface. Lady Rin, for instance, sends a gift to a noblewoman in the capital. A silken screen with hand-painted chrysanthemums. Days later, she sends a second offering, this time a lacquered box of imported incense. The second gift is returned. Not with insult. Not with commentary. Just returned. You note the gesture, carefully, in a corner of your mind, an understated historical nuance. Noblewomen in Kyoto sometimes communicated not with words, but with scent. Letters carried perfumes selected as signals. Too strong, and the message was one of impatience. Too faint, and it implied neglect. The choice of fragrance mattered deeply. A scent inappropriate for the season was seen as a veiled insult. There is one tale, scarcely mentioned, of a woman who sent a letter with no scent at all. The court erupted with whispers. They called it a message with no breath. An accusation of lifelessness. You begin practicing scent blending in your own quarters. Not for letters, but for your own quiet ritual. In a ceramic bowl no wider than your palm, you crush petals, mix resins, grind spices. You wear only a faint trace. Hinoki bark. Dried orange peel. Sometimes cedar ash. It smells like dusk. Like memory held just long enough to fade. Then, late one evening, the estate shifts again. The lady mother arrives. She does not visit Kyoto often. Her presence sends a tremor through the household, subtle but unmistakable. Servants starch their sleeves until they crackle. Gardeners pluck already perfect leaves from trimmed hedges. The kitchen prepares dishes no one requested, as though flavor alone could convey devotion. She summons Lady Rin immediately. You are not included, but that night, you find a folded paper at your door. It is plain. Unsigned. The characters are precise and spare. The hawk flies not for prey, but to remind the sky it's watching. You do not smile. But your breath catches mid-step. You begin to write a reply. The words come quickly, almost too quickly. But before you finish, you stop. You place the brush down. You return to your lacquered chest and pull out the small scroll bearing your cedar branch verse. The original one. You fold it carefully and slide it behind the wall panel in your room. It is not meant to be seen. It is not meant to be read. it is a shrine. To what, you do not know, memory. Defiance. Something else. The next morning, you are summoned, not to the reception hall, not to a banquet, but to accompany a group of visiting courtiers on a pilgrimage to a shrine beyond the city walls. It is not a spiritual task. Not truly. The shrine is small and neglected. Its influence has faded. But with the right patronage, it could become politically useful once more. This is not devotion. This is performance. You are being sent as decoration. But not only that. You understand, now, what else is expected of you. You are also there to listen. Your palanquin is modest, draped in pale fabric, with woven screens that filter sunlight into soft amber. It smells of clean straw and polished wood. You lean back, watching the landscape shift through the screen's threads. At the shrine, the air sharpens. The path is lined with pine needles. Incense wafts from the altar. The monks wear rust-colored robes. And their bows are deep and slow. You step down with precision. Every movement designed. You walk beside the others with the elegance taught to you by repetition. Lady Rin is ahead. Her robes today are butter yellow, patterned with faint clouds. A bold choice. Yellow is a color that announces ambition. It speaks before the wearer opens her mouth. You wonder if she chose it herself. The shrine is peaceful. Humble. Its bell tower leans slightly to one side, weathered by rain and time. The koi pond is small, shaded by overgrown trees. You bow before the altar. You offer a coin. You mouth a prayer that means little to you, because meaning is not the purpose is to be seen offering it. On the return journey, a courtier grows careless. Perhaps the rhythm of travel loosens his tongue. He mentions the Lady Mother. Her declining appetite. Her thinner wrists. Her quiet cough. He believes the palanquin screens will conceal his words. He is wrong. You do not move. You do not blink. But you note every syllable. There is no written record of court women trained to eavesdrop. But historians continue to wonder how they learned to listen so well. Perhaps they were not taught. Perhaps listening became instinct. When survival rests on what is whispered rather than said, silence becomes a tool. You return to the estate without ceremony. No one thanks you. No one praises you. The steward nods. A scroll is laid on your desk. A dish of rice and pickled plum awaits in your room. That night, you dream, you are a hawk, at last, but when you leap into the air, your wings unfurl and crumple. They are made of paper. They catch the wind, but not enough. You drift, not fly. You wake before dawn, heart pounding. There is ink on your palm. You must have fallen asleep while writing. The page is smeared, but the words remain. You can still read them, faintly lit by the morning candlelight. Stillness is not silence. Waiting is not weakness. You fold the paper. You press it flat. You slide it under your bedding, where no one will find it, just in case. The season turns, but the palace does not. Outside, Kyoto exhales into early summer. The streets begin to steam beneath soft rains, and the air thickens with the slow, breathless humidity that seeps into fabric and bone. Rain no longer comes in downpours, but in stubborn, rhythmic drizzles that cling to rooftops and collect in gutters. In the canals, frogs begin their nightly chorus, voices overlapping like conspirators in the dark, their croaks echoing off wet stone as though they are retelling secrets the city has tried for years to bury beneath its silk and ceremony. The hydrangeas bloom in shades of blue and violet along the edge of the inner garden. Their scent, gentle but persistent, finds its way through the slits in the paper windows. Sometimes, when the wind is right, the fragrance pools in the corners of your room like a ghost from another life. But inside the estate itself, the air does not bloom. It hardens, you feel it immediately. Not in one great shift, but in small, cumulative changes. The sort that pile in silence. The mood grows cooler, though the weather burns. The softness that once lived in small courtesies begins to wither. The way the maids speak to you changes first. Their tones dip a little lower. They tread more cautiously, their greetings clipped at the end like hems cut too short. The letters that arrive now bear heavier wax, thicker than before. As if to seal more than messages. As if to muffle, even Lady Rin, who once floated through the halls on ribbons of laughter and perfume, now carries herself differently. Her laughter no longer rises in spirals. It drops quickly, like a stone tossed into a quiet pond. The ripple it leaves behind is brief, almost embarrassed. You watch her sometimes, seated in the morning sun, staring past her own reflection in her teacup, and then, the whisper begins, not a proclamation. Never that. But word moves through the estate like wind through long grass, invisible yet certain. The Lord, they say, may return to the countryside. Not now. Not yet. But soon. Stewards begin to tie their scrolls more tightly, bundling them with an efficiency that suggests something more than routine. The guards at the gates grow more alert, their patrols more frequent, their eyes scanning the horizon not for danger, but for instruction. The Lady Mother, in her quiet way, begins to review the estate's inventories. She orders the finer tea sets counted. The ones used only when high visitors arrive. Her requests are discreet, delivered in folded notes, always sealed, never questioned. The movement behind the stillness builds. You wonder what it means for you. You are no one's favorite. But you are no one's enemy, either. Will you return to the countryside with the main household, tucked safely in the shadow of familiarity? Or will you be left in Kyoto, positioned as a satellite figure, orbiting influence at a respectful distance? Both options contain risk. To be sent home could mean redundancy. To be left behind could mean you are useful. Or invisible. Or both, you continue as you have learned to do. With quiet presence. With practiced grace. Your tasks shift again. They grow irregular, harder to anticipate. Some days, you are summoned to assist with gift arrangements, laying silks and sweets into boxes that will be sent to distant allies. Other days, you are left idle, your hours unclaimed. But here, even idleness must be worn carefully. To do nothing is still a kind of performance. Stillness in this place is not ease. It is precision. A historical note: among concubines during the Edo period, scandal was not the most dangerous fate. That title belonged to stagnation. The slow, careful process of being forgotten. When your novelty faded, so did your position. It was not announced. No punishment was given. You were simply repositioned. Your room moved one hallway lower. Your perfume switched to something less expensive. Your name omitted from banquet arrangements. The erosion of importance was gradual. So subtle, many women never noticed until it had already happened. You begin counting how many times your name is spoken in a single day. Some days, none. Lady Redsleeves, as always, sees what others miss. One afternoon, during calligraphy practice, she glances sideways at you, brush poised. You're being archived, she says, dipping the tip into ink. That's what they do when they're unsure what to do with you. Tuck you into the background. Not erased. Just placed at the edge of the canvas. Still part of the painting. But no longer its subject. You tilt your brush above the paper and smirk, then I'll change the painting. She arches a brow. Her strokes are slower now. Be careful, she replies. Sometimes the painting changes you. That night, a guest arrives, not a noble. Not a steward, a poet, an actual, officially recognized, court-licensed poet, beard neatly combed, voice like lacquered wood. He is invited to the estate for an evening of verse and refinement. It is meant as a display of cultural strength. To prove, to whomever is watching, that the estate is not only powerful, but tasteful. The Lord will be present. So will others of rank. And women will be included. Which means you are assigned a robe of muted violet, the color of dusk just before nightfall. The sleeves are embroidered with pale wave patterns, like ripples across a still lake. You are told to bring a poem. You are told to observe. To speak only when invited. The instructions are clear, if not redundant. When you enter the reception hall, the room is already filled with the warmth of candlelight and the faint scent of sandalwood. You are seated on the edge of the gathering, just close enough to be seen, but far enough not to be central. Your placement, you know, has been chosen carefully. You are visible, but not featured. The poet begins. He opens with old verses. Familiar ones. Songs about blossoms in spring, cicadas in summer, the passing of time and the ache of longing. His delivery is smooth, almost too smooth. He speaks like a man and used to interruption. A man who has not been challenged in far too long. Then, as custom allows, he opens the floor. Lady Rin is quick to offer a seasonal verse. It is about fireflies. Pretty. Polished. Safe. The kind of poem that pleases but does not linger. Another woman, a court lady from the city, offers a poem draped in metaphor so heavy it almost folds in on itself. It is about love. Or maybe absence. Or maybe just weather. You suspect even she is not entirely sure what it means. Then the pause, the room stills, the poet's gaze lands on you. Have you something, lady? He asks. It is not a command. Not precisely. But in a room like this, where every gesture is a signal and every silence a decision, a question from a guest of honor becomes a kind of stage. You inhale. Then exhale. You do not hesitate. You recite. The ink pot cracks. Still, the brush finds its way. There is a beat of silence, then a single laugh. It comes from the poet. It is not loud, but it is genuine. Something has amused him. Or impressed him. Sharp, he says, repeating the very word the Lord once used. Sharp and quiet. He nods once, and just like that, the moment passes, but the air has shifted. You feel it in the eyes that linger on you a second too long. The smiles that come later, tighter. Lady Rin, seated across the room, avoids your gaze. Her expression is fixed, but her posture has changed. One shoulder drawn slightly in, as though bracing. Later, when the evening disperses into soft chatter and cooling tea, you step away from the hall. As you pass through the corridor, the poet walks near. He does not stop. But he leans slightly, and says beneath his breath, do not let them bind your brush too tightly. You bow. You do not respond, a quirky historical note. It was not uncommon for poets in feudal courts to leave unsigned verses or small tokens for women they admired. These were not always romantic. More often, they were invitations. Tests. The beginning of a silent dialogue. If the woman replied with a verse of her own, the game continued. If she did not, it ended before it began. That night, you find something tucked beneath your calligraphy set. A scrap of silk, no words, only a single pressed camellia blossom, perfectly preserved. You do not reply, you smile, quietly, then you select your finest brush, grind the ink, and write a new poem. They built this house, from rules and reeds. I'm the wind in the seams. You do not show it to anyone. You read it once, then fold the paper, then sleep. Historians still debate the true purpose of court poetry. Was it a shield to protect the speaker, or a wound disguised in beauty? Was it a voice, or an echo? Was silence a weapon, or simply the space left behind when the battle was already lost? You wonder if it matters, and you think, perhaps it was always both. The rain finally comes, not in soft, wistful sheets that trace gentle paths down the paper walls, but in a thick and unrelenting deluge that crashes against the roof tiles like the drumming of war. It floods the gravel paths, turning them into sluggish rivers of pale gray, and turns even the quietest corners of the estate into echo chambers for falling water. It does not cool the air. It thickens it. The humidity climbs into your lungs and clings to your sleeves. Summer in Kyoto does not arrive with grace. It arrives like a weight. The air inside the chambers grows dense, heavy with damp. The scent of wet wood and mildew creeps up the sliding panels. Ink begins to bleed on scrolls left uncovered. Paper warps. Robes take longer to dry. Fans, once accessories, now flap constantly like desperate wings. No one breathes easily. Even the koi in the garden pond give up on elegance and sink low, their movements sluggish, their colors dulled by gloom. You are instructed to remain indoors until the weather improves. Which, in the strict vocabulary of the palace, translates to three things: embroidery, etiquette drills, and the silent endurance of hours stretched too thin. Time moves differently here when the rain does not stop. It swells, slow and thick, until boredom presses at your temples like fever. You are placed in the central sitting room, where pale light filters through water-streaked windows. 5 other women are stationed around you like petals arranged by an unseen hand. Lady Rin sits among them. Her presence is quieter than it once was. Since the poetry gathering, she has withdrawn in delicate increments. Her voice now arrives only in soft sighs and small, calculated smiles that barely reach one side of her mouth. It is the smile of someone who is constantly rewriting her performance in real time. You know the expression well. You have seen it in your own reflection too many times not to recognize its origin. It is not sadness. It is rehearsal. One morning, during a lull between the clatter of teacups and the scrape of embroidery frames, Lady Redsleeve settles beside you. The two of you are given the same pattern to stitch: cranes in flight, wings outstretched, legs tucked beneath them as they rise toward imagined clouds. Her cranes are perfect. Every feather symmetrical. Every angle precise. She embroiders as if the pattern has been memorized by her hands. Yours are slower. Less even. Not for lack of care, but for choice. You make one wing slightly smaller than the other. Not an accident. Not a mistake. A decision. She notices without glancing away from her work. You always leave something imperfect, she murmurs. Just above the hum of rain, nature does, you reply, drawing the thread through silk. Why not us? She gives a soft, knowing laugh. Because in here, we're the unnatural. A mainstream historical fact: women of the upper class in feudal Japan were trained from childhood to perfect the illusion of sameness. Symmetry in their dress, balance in their movements, rhythm in their speech. Individual quirks were seen not as charms, but as flaws. Predictability was safety. Deviations were dangerous. Still, you let the asymmetry remain. Then, change comes. Not announced. Not confirmed. Only whispered. The news arrives in fragments, unfinished sentences traded between maids, silences between lines of correspondence. The Lord, they say, will be returning to the countryside within the month. A decision is being made. But more importantly, not everyone will be returning with him. The phrase they use is reassignment. A Kyoto official, one tied distantly to the court, has requested companions for what is referred to as extended courtly service. Which is to say, a selection of concubines will remain behind. Their presence will offer continuity. A gesture of refinement. But everyone knows what it means. It is not exile. But it is not honor either, it is storage. Lady Rin's face drains of color when she hears. She has spoken of the countryside often, in hushed tones tinged with nostalgia and hope. She has been waiting for return. For redemption. For restoration. Kyoto has never suited her. For you, it is more difficult to measure your reaction. Leaving would mean simplicity. Fewer eyes. Familiar walls. But staying might mean visibility. A new sort. A quieter kind of power, yet uncertainty is its own weight. A heavier one. That evening, you are summoned, not to the main chamber. To the library. You walk there alone, your steps muffled by the rain still hammering the wooden corridors. When you enter, you find the Lady Mother seated near an open lattice. Wind tugs at the edge of her sleeves. The storm outside breathes through the walls, but she does not shiver. She is alone, her posture is composed, almost indifferent. Her eyes rest on a lacquered box beside her, closed and glistening with a faint sheen of condensation. She does not look up when you enter. "You've made yourself useful," she says, her voice smooth as water slipping over polished stone. You bow, slowly, deeply, choosing silence. She opens the box. Inside, not poems or silks, but scrolls. Records. Inventories. Correspondence logs. Documents that track the real movement of the estate, the kind of papers that form the nervous system of a household like this. "You've been watching." She continues. It is not a question. Still, you say nothing. She nods once, as if confirming her own suspicion. "Good. I need someone who sees things. Not just flowers and stars and boys with charming faces. I need eyes for movement. For patterns. For quiet signs." There is a pause. A draft winds through the room. One of the paper walls creaks. "I'm leaving 3 women behind," she says. "Lady Rin. Lady Camellia. And one more. I'm considering you." It is not a request. It is not an invitation, it is a statement. You bow again. You feel your ribs press inward. She says nothing further. She begins to return the scrolls to the box, lifting each with deliberate care, her hands steady and sure. You will continue to observe. To record. To remain sharp. You understand, this is not promotion. It is not favor. It is not the beginning of a rise, it is assignment. You are not chosen for beauty. Not for warmth. You are chosen for vision, you are being made into a function. A tool, a ledger wrapped in skin, but for now, that means safety. A fragile kind, but real. Historians still debate whether concubines acted as informants. Some argue that women in such positions were essential to the operation of these households, that their silence masked their surveillance. Others call it revisionism. Fantasy projected backward. They say women like you were not watchers, only watched, but as you step out into the corridor, scroll in hand, the air thick with rain and purpose, you know better, you see everything. A lesser-known tradition, in certain noble households, concubines were assigned symbolic, seemingly trivial tasks. One woman might tend only to white flowers. Another would be responsible for lighting the lanterns each evening. The purpose was not function. It was ritual. It was to remind them they were part of the structure. Necessary, but ornamental. That evening, a maid brings you a new task, a box. Wooden. Light in your hands, inside. Bundles of old poems, submitted by courtiers over past seasons. Your job is to sort them. Categorize them. Assign them meaning, romantic. Seasonal. Spiritual. Political. You read them slowly, carefully. Some are awkward. Some unexpectedly moving. One ends with a line that stays with you. "If I were mist, I'd cling not to mountains, but to your sleeves." You mark it romantic. But then, with a still hand, you copy the line onto your own scroll. Quietly, later that night, under the cover of routine, you walk the corridor carrying a writing brush. It is your excuse. You pass no one. The halls are dim and hushed. You pause at your room, slide open the lacquered panel where your hidden poems are kept. you find the old one. The one you wrote when the silence first noticed you, you read it again, then, without regret, you burn it, not out of fear, but as promise, because if you are to stay here, within this palace, within this role, within this skin of function, then something must be cleared. Not just to survive, but to author. To inscribe, you are no longer a visitor. No longer passing through, you are becoming part of the house, whether you wish to or not. The rain lifts, eventually, not with the sudden spectacle of sunbeams piercing cloud or monks striking bells in celebration. No climactic hush falls across the rooftops. It just recedes. First, one quiet afternoon stretches itself across the sky without droplets. Then another. And then a breeze that does not carry moisture slips beneath the sliding screens. By the third day, the laundry is once again hung outdoors instead of strung like ghost limbs in shadowed corridors. Footsteps grow crisper. Voices regain volume. The koi stir again, you breathe easier. Or maybe not easier, exactly. Just differently. As though your lungs, long trained to filter damp and silence, are learning the shape of this new air. The estate shifts with the changing sky. The household adjusts to the lord's impending departure with the subtle unease of a snake coiling before it sheds. There is no official announcement, no grand procession, only the clues that gather like pollen on lacquered surfaces. Carriage wheels are inspected with more care. Leather trunks are aired on quiet balconies. The staff receives packets of travel prayers rolled tightly and bound with red string. You help wrap several yourself, threading silk cords around bundles of charms with the same precision you once used to bind poems. Each one feels like an anchor. Small. Quiet. Necessary, then it becomes official. Not in words spoken aloud, but in motion followed through. You are staying, you are remaining in Kyoto. Not because you requested it. Not because you earned a place by merit or affection. But because the Lady Mother has need. Of eyes. Of silence. Of someone who has already proven she knows how to speak without making noise. You are given new quarters. A chamber tucked along the eastern side of the estate, smaller than your old one, with less sunlight but far more quiet. It is positioned near the archive rooms, close enough to smell ink even before you enter. You find comfort in its plainness. Its walls feel honest. Like they remember someone who once worked, and not just waited. A mainstream historical fact, in noble Kyoto estates, the bureaucratic machinery of household life was extensive. Official scribes were almost always men, trained and recorded, but much of the domestic record-keeping, the careful management of gifts, inventories, and correspondence, was done by women. Widows. Daughters. Even concubines. Their names were rarely written, but their handwriting shaped what history remembered. You are handed a small iron key. It does not represent power. It is not ceremonial. It is a tool. You now have access to one of the storerooms. You are not the only one who stays. Lady Red Sleeves remains as well. She moves through the estate with calm steps and unreadable eyes, as if nothing ever startles her. She speaks little, listens much, and is always where she needs to be before anyone asks. You are not sure of her exact role. Is she a companion? A steward? A spy? All three, perhaps. Or none. You know better than to ask. One morning, she joins you at the ink table. You are preparing the day's supply, grinding charcoal against stone while water gathers into a slick pool of darkness. You're settling in, she says, her voice casual, as if commenting on the weather. I haven't screamed yet, you reply, watching the swirl form. She smiles, faintly. That's halfway to thriving. You prepare 3 fresh scrolls that morning. Not for poetry. For documentation. Records that are useful, not beautiful. Your new task is to log household exchanges. Gifts received. Gifts given. Their origin. Their purpose. Their flaws, a pair of dyed fans with swallowtail motifs. 3 bolts of indigo silk, origin Hida province. 2 jars of preserved yuzu, 1 cracked on arrival. You copy each description with steady hands. Your brush moves with purpose. The rhythm of it is meditative, a quiet pulse in an otherwise unstable world. And slowly, you begin to notice patterns. Some families offer gifts often, but they always send the same thing. As if fulfilling a duty without care. Others rarely contribute, but when they do, their offerings are deliberate. Measured. One courtier, Lord Shigemoto, never fails to send incense wrapped in seagrass paper, always sealed with cedar oil. Another, Lady Akiko, who once sent elaborate embroidered handkerchiefs, has not gifted anything since the banquet 2 seasons ago. You do not speak of these things, you write them. Historians still debate whether women working in household bureaucracy ever held influence beyond transcription. Some believe they helped shape decisions. However indirectly, by highlighting loyalty and neglect. Others dismiss this as retrospective fantasy. They say the women were shadows, not shapers, but you know. Details shift power. Even the smallest record has weight. One evening, late, as you review old scrolls, your brush stalls, a discrepancy, a gift misdated. A monk's offering of lotus roots recorded under the wrong family name. Small, yes. But a mistake with teeth, if someone wanted to skew perception. You could overlook it. Or you could see what it truly is, an attempt to adjust history by inches. You bring the scroll to Lady Redsleeves, she reads. Her face does not change. But when she rolls the parchment closed, her fingers pause. You see well, she says at last. You meet her gaze. Then nod, then learn to see deeper. She pulls another scroll from within her sleeve. Smaller. Less formal. Not sealed. Just a name, a date, and a phrase written in a hand you do not recognize. Keep watch. The name is unfamiliar, but it does not remain so for long. In the days that follow, your attention sharpens. You begin to listen in new ways. At meal times. In gardens. During tea breaks and between errands. You do not ask. You simply wait. And the whispers find you. A servant mutters about a steward who favors one merchant over others, even when the goods arrive damaged. A maid mentions a scroll that went missing, only to return in a cleaner, newer hand. A junior concubine cries quietly after being removed from a music rehearsal. No reason is given. No questions asked. The name from the scroll slips into conversation near the rear gate. Not addressed directly, but there. You do not confront. You do not interfere, you write. It becomes a second poetry. Less graceful. More exact. A new rhythm entirely. Lady Akiko, no gifts since early spring. Steward Maruya, repeated attempts to shift documentation. Garden boy dismissed after overheard conversation. You are building a ledger of shadows, a curious tradition. In certain Kyoto homes, it was believed that if a record keeper inserted one deliberate mistake into the ledgers each season, the household's luck would turn. A superstition. But some used it as strategy. A name misspelled. A date inverted. A sentence unfinished. You are not ready for that. Not yet, but you understand the power it holds. Your brush gains confidence. One morning, you are handed a package, small. Wrapped in dark indigo cloth. No signature. No seal. Inside, a comb, bone, not ivory. Pale and light, with the carving of a hawk etched delicately along its spine. There is no note. You say nothing. You place it on your desk. Beside your inkstone, beneath the lamp where it catches just enough light to gleam, you do not ask who sent it. You understand what it means. You are still seen, just not by those who speak aloud. Summer in Kyoto doesn't end. It lingers in the breathless pause between one cicada's shriek and the next. It lingers in the heat that rises off roof tiles even after sundown, in the sweat that never quite dries beneath your collar, in the restless pulse beneath your skin that will not slow. The days stretch like pulled silk, glossy and taut. The nights refuse to offer relief. Sleep becomes shallow. Dreams evaporate before they finish forming. Even the paper walls begin to sag, heavy with damp. The scent of perfume no longer floats gently across a room. It sticks to the air like honey left too long in the sun. Still, you work, you always work. Your writing desk has become not just familiar, but essential, a landscape of ink stains and sharpened brushes, of parchment that curls slightly at the corners from humidity. The scrolls gather. Layer upon layer. Corrections. Cross-references. Clean copies of muddled records. Notes so meticulous you could chart the estate's heartbeat by them. The room smells of old wood and wet paper and the faint trace of dried plum. You do not complain. You do not wait. There is no waiting left in you. You are not temporary anymore. You are becoming something else. Some evenings, Lady Redsleeve sits beside you. She says nothing. She offers no compliments, no corrections. Just presence. You both work until the candles gutter and the wax puddles into quiet deaths. When her hands grow still, she hums softly, never a full tune, just fragments of a melody too old to name. It carries no joy. No sadness either. Only memory. Then, one evening, she speaks. There's a difference between being useful and being used. The words are quiet, but deliberate. She does not look at you when she says them, you do not answer. Not with words. But your brush, which had moved so confidently all evening, now pauses just a beat longer between strokes. The bristles hesitate. Then resume. A mainstream historical fact, many concubines who remained in Kyoto were never officially titled as stewards or scribes. But behind the brocade and incense, they managed entire facets of the estate's daily life. They tracked gifts. They guided moods. They shaped the rhythm of the household. Their authority was invisible. Their absence, devastating. You begin to see the same patterns now, the way one steward sharpens his brush over and over when summoned by the Lady Mother, as if buying time. The way a young scribe always rereads your records, but never questions them aloud. The way a box of sweets from the northern provinces sits untouched on a hallway bench for 2 days before being misplaced entirely. Patterns, whispers, movements you can read now, the way others read the sky before rain. You are a net stretched wide beneath still water. And bit by bit, the estate begins to fall into you. Then, midway through the season, a complication. Lady Rin returns. There is no announcement. No music. No fanfare. Just a closed palanquin that arrives in the late afternoon, veiled in silence. Her robes are dark with travel. Her face is hidden. But the air shifts. The courtyard holds its breath. Servants pause longer in their bows. Courtiers exchange glances when they think no one sees. There are murmurs of illness. Of disgrace. Of ambitions unfulfilled. No one speaks plainly. They never do. She is placed 2 wings away from you, in a quieter part of the estate. You do not see her at first. Only the ripple of her return. Her attendants move carefully, speaking in hushed tones. Even the maids sweep her corridor more gently now, as if afraid to wake a ghost. You wonder whether she asked to come back, or whether she simply had nowhere else to be. Days pass. Then, one afternoon, you catch sight of her in the garden. She walks slowly, deliberately, each step careful but unshaken. Her eyes do not meet yours. Her face offers nothing. She passes without a word. You do not greet her, you let her pass. That evening, as you lay your writing mat on the floor, your fingers find a piece of folded paper tucked beneath its edge, no seal, no signature, just 7 small brushstrokes. The hawk watches still, but its wings ache. You sit with the note longer than you should. Historians still argue whether women who returned from rural postings were signs of failure or of something more dangerous. Some say they were cast aside, used up. Others insist they returned with knowledge, of alliances, of mistakes, of things not meant to be spoken in Kyoto's polished halls. Whatever the truth, most agree on one thing: they return changed. You begin to watch her again. Not from malice, from instinct. She no longer performs in public. No music. No poetry. No banquets. Her name is not mentioned in the steward's reports. She does not write verses. She does not offer advice. Her days are filled with quiet meals and slow walks through shaded corridors. She smiles, sometimes. But the smile never reaches her eyes. She is here. But not part of here, or so it seems. Then one evening, as you pass her chamber on your way to file the day's records, you see something. Her door is slightly ajar. Inside, you glimpse a table. On it, a stack of correspondence. Fresh parchment. No dust. No stains. These letters are not old. Your breath stirs, but you do not stop. Not then. Later, you return to the archives. You begin cross-referencing. Quietly, you find it. A gift recorded under her name. A small offering sent to a court official. Someone recently elevated in favor. A subtle move. But a move all the same. She is not resting, she is repositioning. You do not report it, you log it. Carefully. Precisely, you fold the detail into your scrollwork the way a weaver hides a red thread in black cloth. Hidden, but present. Permanent. A quirky historical tidbit: in Kyoto's noble homes, messages were not always sent in words. The household spoke in objects. A slightly higher flower arrangement meant status. A barely open screen signaled distrust. The placement of incense, the tilt of a lantern, even how far a cushion was pushed under a table, each carried meaning. A screen fully open said, "I welcome you." A screen left ajar by only a finger's width whispered, "I am watching." You begin practicing this silent grammar. In your chamber, the rules shift. Some days, you slide your screen wide, allowing light to spill across your mat. Other days, you leave it almost closed. Tonight, it is open just a crack, and you wonder, who is watching whom? Then, just past dawn, you are summoned, not to the steward, to the Lady Mother. Again, you go, you bow deeply. The air between you is warm with unspoken thought. She observes you a moment longer than necessary. "You've grown efficient," she says at last. Reliable. You keep your eyes lowered. Your breath steady. There is an invitation, she continues. A poetry gathering. The palace garden. Several households will be in attendance. It would be useful if someone were present who knew how to listen. You incline your head. As you wish. She pauses. Then adds, with a voice that softens at the edges, "Take Lady Rin with you." You look up, too quickly. She smiles. Not kindly. Not cruelly. Just. Knowingly, "It will be good for her," she says. "And for you." You bow again. Deeper, but behind your silence, thoughts crash like waves. Why now? Why together? What has changed? You have no answers, but you understand this much: the garden party will not be about poems, and hawks do not fly together unless they mean to circle something. Or someone. The day of the garden poetry gathering dawns clear and strange, not dazzling. Not dramatic. Just, aware, as though the city itself is holding its breath. Not out of fear, but out of habit. The sky is a pale, even blue, unblemished and without promise. The heat still clings to the cobblestones, to the beams and windowsills, to your own skin. But now there is a breeze, just enough to stir the corners of draped silk and make the maple leaves twitch. It does not cool. It reminds. The world is still turning, you dress slowly. Deliberately, layered robes in gray and indigo. They whisper with movement, not with color. These are not the shades of declaration. They are the tones of presence without provocation. Your reflection, when you catch it briefly in the basin water, is neither soft nor sharp. It simply is. The steward's assistant arrives with a small lacquered box. Inside, a row of perfumed sachets, each carefully tied and marked with a crest. You are asked to choose one. The peony smells like longing. The lotus, like expectation. You pick the cypress. Its scent is cool, almost metallic. Like precision. Like memory that never asked to be remembered. Lady Rin is already waiting in the courtyard when you arrive. She stands in the shade, framed by a cedar pillar and the curve of the roof's shadow. Her robes are a muted plum, their sleeves exaggerated in length, trailing slightly even as she remains still. She doesn't look at you directly. But she doesn't look away. There is no invitation in her posture, but no rejection either. Something like a truce, or perhaps simply the quiet fatigue that follows too many unspoken thoughts. The palanquin is narrow. Made for single travel. But you board together nonetheless. The journey is short. A neighboring estate near the southern hills, secluded and known for its taste. Its discretion. Its appetite for poetry as both ornament and weapon. You do not speak as the bearers carry you along the gravel roads. The rhythm of their steps is soft, almost soothing. But your thoughts are not soft. They scatter. Then regroup. Then scatter again. When you arrive, the estate receives you with a kind of curated grace. Nothing is spontaneous. Everything rehearsed. Attendants wait at the gates in robes the color of unspun cream. Not one of them looks you directly in the eye. A single musician sits on a lacquered bench near the main entryway, plucking a koto with a tempo so restrained it feels more like heartbeat than song. The scent of sandalwood lingers in the air, not too heavy, not too light. Platters of sweets sit untouched on a low table near the corridor. They are for show. Everything is. You are led into the garden. It unfolds like a painting, stone lanterns worn smooth by decades of rain, a koi pond edged with blooming irises, bamboo arbors veiled in cascading wisteria. The gravel paths have been raked into perfect spirals that no one has yet dared to step through. Even the wind moves gently here. It does not disrupt. It glides. You are seated beneath a wooden pergola, alongside half a dozen other women, all of them noble. All of them alert. You recognize two from previous banquets. One tilts her head in greeting. The other smiles, but the smile stops at the corners of her lips, like tea left to cool too long. It is all etiquette, no heat. Then the host appears. Lady Yukiko. Her steps are soft but deliberate, her sleeves trailing behind her like soft wings. She is elegant, somewhere in her mid-30s, with a face shaped by the kind of beauty that inspires caution before admiration. Her smile is controlled. Her voice, unmistakably practiced. "Thank you for gracing our gathering," she says. It is not often that the capital's finest watchers choose to sit together in one place. The word watchers does not echo, it simply lands. You bow deeply. Lower than expected. Not out of humility, but calculation. A mainstream historical fact, in Kyoto, poetry gatherings were never just for art. They were messages woven in metaphor. They were reconnaissance dressed in verse. Invitations were tools of power. Inclusion or omission spoke louder than declarations. A clever line could change a favor. A poorly chosen image could shift a loyalty. Lady Rin is beside you now. She does not look at you. Nor you at her. But the air between you holds something, history, maybe. Or memory. You haven't spoken since the assignment was delivered. And now, in a garden where every glance carries consequence, you wonder if silence is your only safety. The first round of poems begins. The theme is announced, transience. Lady Akiko, seated across from you, recites her offering first. Her voice is clear. Her diction practiced. A petal falls, before it ever felt the sun, was it still a blossom? There are murmurs. Nods. One laugh too close to a yawn. It is a safe poem. Gentle in its melancholy. Decorative, then you speak, lantern smoke, rises, sways, disappears, still warm where it touched. This time, there is a pause. Lady Yukiko nods slowly. Ah. Not just observation, she says. Absorption. Very good. You feel the shift beside you. Lady Rin stirs. Not sharply. Not dramatically. But intentionally, she offers her poem. The hawk forgets how long its wings have waited, then it flies. The garden falls quiet. The silence is not admiration, it is recognition. Lady Yukiko lifts her chin slightly. A revival poem. Rare. Lady Rin meets her gaze. Her voice is mild. Her words are not. So is return. And then the garden breathes again. But differently now, the poems have become something else. The space between lines is now filled with meaning. You can feel the others recalculating, reassessing, as if the air itself has changed weight. This is no longer art. This is alignment. Position. Declaration. Lady Redsleeves was right. This is no party, it is a ledger. With cushions instead of chairs. With gravel underfoot, a quirky detail. Some Kyoto poetry rounds involved the host offering an object instead of a theme. A pine branch. A lacquer spoon. A tea whisk. The guest would write based on its symbolism. There is a story of one such gathering where Lady Kasumi presented a tray of broken dishes. The verses were so raw, so dangerous, that half the women never returned. Some say the tray was never seen again. Your object is handed to you now, a folded square of paper, blank. Lady Yukiko offers a smile too smooth to be kind. This round is untitled, she says. Write only what cannot be said aloud. Your brush hovers, for the first time that afternoon. Your hand hesitates, then moves. If silence could braid my hair, it would do it gently. No signature. No seal. Just the weight of what went unsaid. You pass it forward. Later, as the gathering begins to dissolve into farewells and veiled commentary, into rustling fabric and subtle bows and the quiet click of sandals on stone, Lady Rin walks beside you into a grove of bamboo that edges the far side of the garden. The stalks rise tall around you, swaying slightly. They do not creak. They only listen. You walk in silence for a long while, then, without turning, I didn't choose to return, she says. They chose to bring me back. I think they want me watched. You nod. I'm not the only one watching you. She looks skyward. The clouds above are pale and thin, I know, she says. But you're the only one who understands why I moved the way I did. You say nothing, then, do you regret it? She doesn't answer right away, just a shrug. What's the use? At the edge of the grove, you part, no farewell. Just distance. When you return to your chamber, there is a scroll waiting, no wax seal. No formal address, it is from Lady Redsleeves. Inside, a single line, keep your ink dry. Autumn comes faster than expected. Historians still debate whether women like you ever truly held power. Whether your scrolls were strategies or just records. Whether your words shaped the future or simply survived it. You sit at your window, the city below exhales, and for the first time in days, you dip your brush not to record what has happened, but to write something for yourself, a verse. No audience, even the watcher, sometimes needs to close her eyes. You wake before dawn the next day, the light has not yet touched the tiled rooftops. The sky remains a deep, heavy gray, as if it is still deciding whether to release another storm or let the morning slip in gently. Kyoto lies hushed beneath a skin of silver mist, the kind that softens all edges, disguises the seams between roof and wall, between earth and stone. The garden outside your window is wet with the memory of a light rain no one remembers falling. The leaves glisten faintly. Somewhere in the distance, a crow calls once, sharp and solitary, then falls into silence again. Something feels different, not loud, not urgent. Just a subtle turn, like a scroll slipping from a low table. Landing without sound. Like a glance exchanged across a room too large for its echo, you rise slowly, no need to light a lantern. The dawn gives enough to move by. You dress in pale gray, the color of ash before wind touches it. Your hands move through the rhythm without hesitation. Fabric wrapped, tied, folded. Hair gathered and pinned. Your fingers do not search for memory. They have already memorized it. Your desk has changed. Once a place of curiosity, now a place of function. The lacquer has dulled where your forearm rests each night. Brushes lie clean but damp from use. Inkstones, scrolls, narrow knives for trimming paper. Folded notes. Marked copies. A neat stack of documents waiting for the final hand to seal them. No perfume bottles. No fans. No cosmetics. To the side, a small dish, pressed plum blossoms float inside, faintly withered but still holding shape. You don't remember placing them there. But they've remained, and you let them. The paper screen shifts, Lady Redsleeves enters without sound, she does not knock. She never has. Her presence is precise. Measured. She carries something today, a sealed scroll, its cord neatly tied with a red silk thread. She sets it on your desk. You'll be leading record keeping for the end of season exchange, she says, voice calm, almost light. You nod once, she watches you. Then adds, Lady Rin will assist. A brief pause, if she follows your lead. Another nod. Nothing more. Questions would be wasteful now, a mainstream historical fact. In the noble estates of Kyoto, the end of season exchange was no poetic metaphor. It was a quiet orchestration of hierarchy. Autumn was not simply the next season. It was a rebalancing. Silk robes in deeper shades replaced the pastel. Incense shifted from floral to wood. Gifts were reassigned. Quarters were rearranged. Servants changed corridors. Even the scrolls were recopied, their language more restrained. Each detail mattered. And each detail needed watching. That task, this season, is yours. You spend the following days buried in paper, scroll after scroll. Record after record. The transition has grown messy. Unusually so. Names repeated. Numbers misaligned. One family sends the same gift twice. Another offers nothing. A third delivers a lacquer tray meant for an entirely different household, deliberate, perhaps, in its error. But you catch it. You make the correction. You mark it, fold the scroll precisely, and set it aside for higher eyes. Lady Rin is there, she sits across from you. Her sleeves tucked back. Her brush steady. She writes cleanly, almost without pause. Her movements are efficient. Not showy. She asks no questions. Answers only if addressed. Her voice is clear, her inflection neutral. She is no longer playing a part. She is maintaining one. You wonder what she sees when she looks at you. You wonder if she thinks the same thing. when the last scroll is finally completed and tied with its proper seal, she lingers beside the desk. Her voice is soft. Unforced. I thought being chosen meant something, she says. You do not answer. She adds, now I think, maybe being retained means more. You do not speak. But your fingers still over the silk cord. She sees it. She leaves. That evening, you walk the garden alone. The light is thick with heat, though the sun is already descending. The lanterns have been lit early. They glow faintly against the encroaching dusk, their paper skins trembling in the slight wind. The air is full of cicadas again. They do not sing. They scream. Their voices rise and fall in ragged waves, as if they are trying to tear the season open early. You walk slowly, gravel shifts beneath your steps, you think about what you have become. You came here as a name, no title. No weight. Just a possibility. A petal on the breeze. You bent where you had to. Held still when it mattered. Learned the rhythms. Wrote them down. Observed. Waited. Endured. Now, you are something else, not favored. That was never the goal, not forgotten. That is no longer a risk, you are needed. And you are quiet, not a jewel. Not a lantern, you are a hinge. A seam. A silent part of the structure that holds without being seen, a quirky historical detail. Some women who served long years as record-keepers in noble Kyoto estates were buried with scroll seals tucked into the sleeves of their funeral garments. Not as a symbol of rank, but of absorption. Their hands had written so many names, so many numbers, so many quiet notations that the seals became part of their story. Paper and flesh reduced to ash together. Not for honor. For accuracy. You wonder what will be buried with you someday. The next morning, as the corridor fills with the scent of brewing tea and the faint scuff of sandals, the lady mother passes by. She does not speak, but she looks, not long. Not warmly. Just long enough, a glance. A pause. A nod. It is enough. She has read the records, she has seen the corrections, she has measured the steadiness. You have earned nothing, in the way that courts define reward, and everything. You return to your chamber. You open the lacquer box. Place your inkstone gently inside. Wrap your brush in silk and set it beside the pressed plum blossoms. Refill the lantern oil. Fold a clean cloth. All without thinking. Every motion practiced. Every gesture inherited. These tasks once belonged to someone else, now, they are yours. Historians still argue about women like you. Did you shape history, or did you only clean up its mistakes? Did you author events, or simply ensure no one tripped over their own forgotten line? It does not matter now, because tonight, you understand the truth. You were the line no one read aloud, but you were the line that held the entire verse together. You close the screen slowly. Let the world narrow to the space of one room, then you pick up your brush, not to copy, not to edit, not to preserve someone else's decisions. You begin a final entry, not for them, for yourself. The hawk returns, not for the sky, but for the ground beneath it. You smile, just a little, then set down your brush. The lanterns burn low now. Their flame flickers gently against the paper, no longer demanding, just present. The records are sealed. The brush has been wrapped. The door remains closed. Outside, the garden stills. Wind passes slowly through the branches of the cypress. The koi rest beneath the water. The stones are warm from the day, cooling inch by inch. You sit by the screen, the shadows reach toward you. They are not frightening. They are soft. The night holds no audience now. No watchers. No lists to maintain. No favors to track, only breath, only presence. You are no longer performing, no longer proving, you are simply here, and the silence, so often filled with secrets, is now full of something else. Peace. Yes. But also recognition. You shaped something, not the headline. Not the proclamation. But the foundation, and that, too, is power. Let your breath ease, let your shoulders loosen, let the candlelight blur into gold behind your eyes. You've written enough, you've witnessed enough, and for tonight. You are enough, you are safe, you are seen, you are home. Sleep well.